Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are on YouTube and you want to actually join the conversation, you can click on the little link down below and join us in Zoom and Mukana. If you are here as an attendee and you'd like to be part of the panel, you just need to get here early. We would love to have you. We'd love to have you contribute your knowledge to what we're doing here, but we do need you to get here a little early so we can make sure everything's working. We open the doors at 6, from 6 to 6:40. I can't promise anything. We're dealing with technical issues. We're talking about radio. We're talking sometimes about mustaches, but we just kind of wander around and have a conversation. At 6:40, we distribute the Discord link. Discord is where almost 800 of us keep talking about this between shows. At 6:42, we start our mic checks. Once we've started the mic checks, the panel's closed, and it's best to get there a little safe. Sometimes we start a little earlier, and sometimes right at the very end we miss you. So you have to be here by 6:40 at the latest to be part of the panel. So make sure to get here early for that. At 7 o'clock, we'll start general Q&A. And really the Q&A is how we run the show. The show is really driven by the attendees asking questions and kind of pushing the conversation forward. So we really depend on you to think up the questions, think up the things that you're trying to figure out in the real world, in your world, and let us at least discuss them. Hopefully we'll give you at least a point to an answer. Whether we give you an answer or not, I can't promise that. But the general discussion is from 7 to 8, and then 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We then go into some certain verticals. So Mondays are kind of general purpose. Tuesdays are audio. Wednesdays are video and camera. Thursdays generally are artists. Friday and Saturday are both education, and Sunday's kind of wide open. So those are the kind of the different verticals that we do each week or each day. If you want to share this with other people, I'll put a link in Mukana here. Use that link. Don't use your own link. Otherwise, people will come in as you, and that gets confusing. So so anyway, so that's kind of how it all runs. Bill, are you able to manage questions for us today?
Sure, be happy to. Let me get that.
I'll pop some in your direction here.
Great.
Let's see here.
I have to open that in a different browser, but yes.
Yeah. While you're doing that, I'll ask the first one here.
Okay.
Lawrence asks, does anyone have any experience with OpenReel? They claim to control a phone and webcam remotely and upload the recording afterwards. Collaborators can join to see, hear, and comment. This would be a great solution for my remote theater projects. I haven't used OpenReel, but I will say that everybody that I've talked to that has used OpenReel is really happy with it, except for the price, which is expensive. But if you have the budget, so far all the feedback that we've gotten has been good. Go ahead, Garrick.
Yeah, I have a buddy who uses it for his company, and it just saves them a ton of time. It's been great for them. They saves them a bunch of travel to shoot something, and they just have them pop open their phone. They can send them different types of examples of what they want in the shoot, and then they just shoot it, and then they can review it right away. And it just has been working great for them. But yeah, the price is tough.
Is it $5,000 a month? Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like $5,000 a month to use it, but yeah. So it's not something you do on a shoestring. But everybody that I've talked to that has been ready that has taken the plunge has been happy. You can send scripts to people, so it'll do little teleprompting and all the other bits and pieces. And so it's a very high end solution for people to use, but it costs a high end solution. Go ahead, Colin.
Not having used it myself, I had a follow-up question. How does it differ from just having a VNC server on a phone, which of course you can do on Android phones? I'm not so sure about iOS. Well, but can you just remotely control a phone that way and achieve the same thing?
I don't. There's a lot of features that they're putting into it. So there's a lot of people that can watch on the other end. There's comments back and forth. There's teleprompt support. There's local records.
It sounds like it's quite well integrated. I'm just wondering.
It's very well integrated.
If you could emulate it in a more cost-effective way.
You could emulate something like it, but the people that you're sending, here's the hard part. When you send something out, when you want someone to pick up their phone and do it, they don't know anything about what they're doing.
Right. You want it to be very simple for the client side. Yeah.
Yeah. It appears that what they've really gotten right is the UI and the support system, so that a non-technical person can pick up their phone and contribute to a show. And anything that requires much more than them opening the app is going to be, I can tell you, as we prep 20 to 50 people a week, and you'd be surprised at the trouble that people get themselves into when they don't have a lot of technical background. Go ahead, Lawrence, and then Brian.
Yeah, I wanted to use it for theater performing projects, so the kids at home could do their acting, and the director could peek in, and I could help with the filming. But at $5,000 a month, ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
school won't be able to afford it.
It's really designed as a broadcast solution, probably not as anything else. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So I haven't used it, but a company that I've used to hire crews around the country when I need to shoot elsewhere is now offering it as a service. So they have a license for it, and you can use it through them. So that might be something to look at to avoid the big sticker shock.
Yeah, and we're looking at it to do the same thing. Like, just get it as a general service for. We don't have the right shows for it because so much of what we do is live. But we have been thinking about using it as a contribution mechanism because of that. Go ahead, Garrick. You're muted, or you're very quiet.
Check 1 2.
No, you're super low. Something went awry there. Go ahead. Anyway, so unless you got something real quick, Garrick, you got a quick fix? No. Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. All right. Bill,
you.
next question.
The next question, TJ Asser asked, whatever happened to Alex's Bane mask with integrated microphone? Did circumstances change the need for such a device?
I'm looking for my Bane mask. I don't know where I put it. I think I put it over on another table that's a little further away. I got the Bane mask. It's kind of cheap. It was mostly for fun. And I didn't want to integrate the mic with the Bane mask. My obsession with the Bane mask was I wanted to go. I haven't had the guts to do it, and I haven't had the time to really think it through it, but I just wanted to go to, I just thought it'd be funny if I went to Whole Foods and started talking to people in a Bane mask. There's something about the contrast of, are you looking for the bananas? They're not here, so, can you find me some sugar? That was all I wanted to do with the mask. I have a tendency to think about funny clips for TikTok that would be fun to do. But so I didn't want to integrate that. What I am working on, and I've finally carved out the time this weekend to get the printer. The printer's been sitting here for, as you guys know, for like 6 weeks. It's hard for me to describe how busy my schedule has been, but it's been, starting with all of you. Actually, I start meetings at 4:30 in the morning, and then I run pretty hard until 7. And then I hang out with my kids and go to sleep. And that's pretty much every day, for me right now. And so I've carved out a little time to finish putting together the printer with my son this afternoon or this evening. And all I want to do is I'm taking the I can't think of the name of the app right now, but I'm taking an app that scans your face, and Bellus 3D, and they automatically make a mask format that is custom to your face based on the scan of your face. And so what I'm doing there is taking that and then adjusting it so that I pull one side out, that I can build like a little clip that I can put a Countryman without the hard piece here, just a little Countryman to run up into it. That's my big plan. It's been sitting there not done because of all the other production that I'm doing. I know that it's a couple of days of me fiddling spread across a couple of weeks of doing it. So that's where it's going. And I'm hoping to do it over the next couple of weeks now that we've staffed up, and I'm not doing 4 or 5 people's jobs. I'm only doing 2 people's jobs. So anyway, that's the delay right now. And but we're hopefully going to be. I'll show it as the iterations as I print it. The first thing I'm going to do is just print the one that comes from Bellus, and then I'll start working on it in 3D and figure out how to add the pieces that need to get done. Anyway, that's where it's at. Next question.
John Merrill asks, once in a while I get a message from Zoom that my internet is unstable. Is that maybe because I'm using Wi-Fi?
It very well could be. Sometimes I get these questions. I get that when I feel like I have good internet, but Wi-Fi could affect it. Go ahead, Colin.
It's quite possibly related to Wi-Fi, but it's not exclusively a Wi-Fi issue. It probably relates to a certain level of packet loss, which would be an intermittent problem, possibly, depending on how your ISP is set up. For example, cable providers put you on a shared network with most of your neighbors. So if they all log in and all start doing a bunch of high bandwidth things, your available bandwidth might plummet at one moment and then skyrocket up again.
And it
later.
depends on your
so
service,
you might
right?
See, you might see that kind of thing.
I mean, the two services that oversubscribe their networks probably more than any others is AT&T Uverse and Spectrum. And they are worthless.
Basically, any cable internet service will
they do.
oversubscribe in that way, and you'll be on a shared network versus DSL, which is not a shared network at any point.
The cable networks are shared, but the oversubscription of Uverse and Spectrum is almost criminal. Like we know when you fill out, we send out forms to hundreds of people a month and then we have to go through and check them. And I can tell you that when we see Spectrum or AT&T Uverse as their provider, we know we're screwed. Like we just know that we have no idea what's going to happen there. And even if we test them well, it may not work. Comcast, generally fine. Like it's, Comcast or Xfinity or whatever they want to call it. That generally is going to work okay. Fios means that it's going to work. Google
Shockingly, I also found problems with the AT&T fiber service, which was really
and I wouldn't be surprised. It's really
same issue. Yeah.
So go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like we got 24 people that are pinging back and forth between Zoom and back forth, and Zoom's always saying, "Are you still there? Are you still there? Are you still there?" And if it doesn't hear anything, then and vice versa, then it thinks that you're not there, and so it can't account for you until it can.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, if you go under settings under statistics, you could get a sense of what's happening. So when you see that popping up, take a look at it, and you can see where it's. The issues are usually in terms of the bandwidth and ping.
And what I will say is that if you're doing anything that matters on Zoom, you should be on Ethernet. Like it doesn't matter how fast your internet connection is. Doesn't matter, you should be on an Ethernet connection, especially if you start turning up the knobs on the quality of your audio, and especially if you're connecting to someone with a room. So you see the DVE store conference room down there. Once you connect to that, it's going to ask for a lot more bandwidth. And one thing that we have found is that Zoom has lower latency than everyone else, and it's pretty unforgiving. So once it starts asking for 720 or 1080 out, especially doing a point-to-point on a 1080, we see all kinds of frame loss and other things going on because it's doing a little lower latency. And lower latency means that it's more interactive for us to talk to, but it's also there's less room for error when it comes to packet loss. You cannot do a high profile event at high resolution 720 and on Wi-Fi and expect it to turn out seamlessly. It just won't happen. Go ahead, Mike.
Just to give you an insight from on Uverse, it's very much distance based, and Mike, I've been on Uverse all along here, and I can do anything I want. It's a matter of how far the house is from the VRAD. That's where the things are combined, and it goes out over fiber. And in my case, the VRAD is on my backyard fence. I'm 200 feet out, and the signal is too strong. But they're running over two twisted pairs. So I think they're very distance sensitive. So you can't just out of hand say it won't work, because it does work. Okay, on circumstances.
I don't know anything about Uverse or Spectrum or how they build their little networks or whatever. All I know is results. The results are that the most unstable ones in the United States, after we have processed, at this point approaching 6,000 people, I can tell you with certainty, absolute certainty. I don't know how the networks work. I just know that Uverse and Spectrum are dog.
But it's based on location. You guys in the West Coast. You guys in the West Coast said AT&T wireless never works, and then it worked great in other cases.
I'm not talking about wireless. I'm talking about Uverse and Spectrum. All I'm saying is they are. If you are on them and you have any choice to get off them, you should. If you care about your internet and you care about, and you're trying to do something that's because it's just they're horrible networks. And I don't know why they're horrible networks. I just know from results. After I have a very high sample rate, and I can tell you which ones are good and which ones are bad, just based on our experience. And our experience is they're worthless. Like they're literally almost criminally worthless. I mean, someone should go to jail for what they're doing. All right, next question.
Okay, we'll move along. Our own John Idelson in the panel says, has anyone used a Sanken CS-M1 4-inch compact shotgun microphone? Sound quality, what's it like?
Anyone?
Well, General Sanken is highly prized as a very good company. So they start off with a really good reputation. The 4-inch compact shotgun microphone is often something you'd see on a camera or something like that. But I'd just say their reputation is real good. I've never used that one.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with it other than the biggest problem we have with Sanken is that they're so sensitive that we have to be very careful of like their labs and other things. They're so sensitive that we have to be very careful where we put them because they just pick up everything. So so it looks like a cool one. I probably would feel comfortable getting one or renting one based on that and seeing how they work. Go ahead, Courtney.
Only related to that, I just saw, I don't know if anyone else saw it, that I think it was DPA came out with a micro shotgun that's about that big. That's for use to plug into wireless transmitters for planting up in, in car roofs and things like that. But it's a super cardioid, and it's about the size of a tiny lavalier. It's about that long. I
still want an office where we just have all the mics.
Or maybe it was
just
deity.
Sitting around we can test them. Yeah.
It was
cool.
a DPA that has a gooseneck.
DPA. Yeah, it has a little gooseneck and a short cable that plugs into a transmitter.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
Very nice. Beju from here. Question about Zoom rooms. Is there a way to see statistics for the connection like you can with the standard client?
I don't know. We haven't. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not seeing anything on the here's the controller side, and there's only a couple places you can go in the top right, which is this. You only get these, and under about you get that, and under the little info here at the top you get that. So I'm not seeing anywhere that you can really dig in and find anything additional. There might be some kind of secret key combination or something where you press something and it'll pop it up, but not that I've seen. I'll go dig it in the manual and see if I can find something.
Yeah, that discussion came up with us a couple of days ago because we're now using Zoom rooms for a lot of our connections, and it's we realized we didn't know what the person. I mean, it would be nice also to know, for instance, what kind of connection are they using? Are they using Ethernet or Wi-Fi? All that information is available to the app. It would be nice to know how it's, for that to be passed back to us so that we know what's going on. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, I was really looking at this because I was in a couple of Zoom meetings today using the Zoom room, and the bandwidth was really spiking. I was monitoring it using the Windows Ethernet monitor because there was no other way I could see it. And I saw the bandwidth go up to 8 megs and suddenly drop to 2 megs. So wasn't sure what was happening. And the resolution seemed to pop in and out of 720. So I was wondering so if there was some way to see it, it's easier to monitor.
And was that a point-to-point, or were there more than one person in the Zoom room?
More than one person. It was a meeting, about 80 people in it. I was just adding the Zoom room basically to just pump it up to 720. And I was just monitoring to see how it was keeping up. So one thing I did see was it took a while to go up to 720. For the last couple of days, I noticed that you have to be in the meet. Sometimes you need to be in the meeting for about 5 to 10 minutes before it actually went up to 720. That was funny.
Interesting.
It's a long delay.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Next question.
James Babbitt from here in San Diego says, when somebody in a Zoom meeting has a poor internet connection, sometimes a host will have everyone turn off their camera. Is this a solution? Would it help if the person with the poor connection just simply turns off their own camera?
Go ahead, Colin.
Generally, it's not a meaningful solution for everyone to turn off their camera because Zoom is generally pretty good about switching from server hub and spoke to peer-to-peer. I'm pretty sure they don't make significant use of the peer-to-peer component of WebRTC at all, actually. And Mr. Edelson might be able to comment more on that. But to the extent that WebRTC as a general framework uses peer-to-peer, then you need to be sensitive. The implementation needs to be sensitive to the available bandwidth of any given node to determine whether that node should be sharing out a stream to other nodes. Generally, Zoom is pretty good about that. So no, I wouldn't think that everyone turning off their camera is going to make a meaningful difference. The person with the lower bandwidth turning off their camera obviously would have an impact for them specifically, but Zoom seems to be pretty good about handling that sort of thing.
Go ahead, Mike, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm just going to mention that Colin hit it. In Jitsi, which does use more peer-to-peer, it does matter. So if you're having trouble in the Jitsi conference,
I know that for Hangouts for a long time, one of the reasons that we had such a high requirement for participants to be in a show was because one slow connection could destabilize the reflector. So it was like you could basically have it crash just because one person, because it's trying to keep one person in sync with everybody else, and it can't. But I haven't had that problem in general with Zoom, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the 2 times we had problems where we ended up closing the whole thing and bringing it back on. Turning off cameras, turning on cameras is a band-aid solution at best. If you're having problems throughout the whole Zoom, then you might want to think about restarting the Zoom. But if it's one person, if anything, they just jump off, jump back on, see if that fixes the problem, or have them look at do speed tests on their machine and see how their internet is working from that machine.
Yeah. Next question.
Victor says, does the panel think Plural Eyes is worth the cost? What are the alternatives? Asking for a friend.
Go ahead, Lawrence, and then Sky.
It depends on on the kind of projects you have. Final Cut Pro will do about 80% of the job, but I'm using Plural Eyes all the time, and it's amazing. If you do longer events, like 4, 5, 6 cameras for like 2 hours, it's a must. And the one top feature is it's correcting for audio drift, which is fantastic. It will pay back in one big project, and it's super fast. It's synchronized. You import all your camera angles, just drop in your folders basically from your Finder, and then you click synchronize, and it's actually as fast as what you see on your screen right now. It's 10-15 seconds. It spits out an XML file for Premiere or for Final Cut, and you can make a multicam project automatically in it. You open it up and you start cutting. It's really, really, really good.
Good, Sky.
Plural Eyes is the grandfather of this synchronization in the audio. So yeah, it's been around a long time. I have currently been using all the synchronization within Premiere and been reasonably happy with that because I don't have to do that many multicam synchronizations. But yeah, Plural Eyes has been around a long time. It's a standalone app that works with multiple NLEs.
Go ahead, Garrick.
I think I have my audio issues figured out. The thing I really like about Plural Eyes is you can select something. You can tick a box that says replace audio in your clip. So that way you can have all of your clips have the same source audio. So it just makes sorting out your audio and editing that stuff a lot easier, in my opinion. So I love Plural Eyes. It works great.
Good, Victor. And we'll move on.
Does it work with Blackmagic DaVinci?
I believe DaVinci has its own synchronization that's pretty good.
Okay, go ahead, Lawrence.
It doesn't have an option in the export options for DaVinci, but since it's XML, I assume it will be able to ingest that.
Next question.
Eddie Scott, Mission Viejo asks, any recommendations for managing the Zoom Mukana Discord experience when attending office hours on an iPad?
I don't know about the Discord part. I mean, if you go to the desktop version of Mukana, you'll have a version where you're watching it and it's all integrated. So the desktop version, which is available in the chat for Zoom, the desktop version of Mukana will show video, and then you can ask questions and chat and do comments and so on and so forth. So that'd be probably the easiest way. I don't know how to do Discord other than just kind of flick back and forth. I don't really look at Discord during the show, so I don't know. Any other tips? But desktop Mukana runs fine on an iPad, so you can do it there and watch it. You can also listen to it on Mukana. When I've taken a couple times off now, I took last week. I couldn't talk, so I just listened, and I thought that the audio version on Mukana was pretty good. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The best thing I can say is if you know your HTML coding skills, just to make your own interface that can switch between the three. Other than that, yeah, it's way too small of a desk space to actually have all three.
Well, no, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Well, I'd be interested to know if anyone is using the combination of the Zoom client and Mukana in a split screen on the iPad. My iPad is not new enough to attempt that, but that seems like a usable solution. I generally rely on Discord notifications, which is why you find me replying to things that mention me and not other things. But that may be a too self-centered approach. I don't know.
Go ahead. Next question.
Mike Andrews says, when I joined the office hours webinar about 11 minutes before start time, I repeatedly got a meeting ID invalid error message from the app memory and using the join in the email. At 10 minutes prior, it worked. That would be really bad for mere mortal users. Do we need to report a bug to Zoom? Note, at 10 minutes, I got a waiting for the host to start the webinar, which is what I would expect.
Yeah, in general, I think there's something going on. I'm trying to get my finger on it. A lot of people, there's something going on with the membership process or the list process, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I haven't reported it as a bug because I'm trying to define what it is. We see a lot of people, I'm getting a lot of reports back from people who are getting kicked off of the list for no reason. They're not unsubscribing, they're just getting dropped off the list. We're using it in a way that I don't think many people use Zoom, which is we've had the same event that people can keep on subscribing to for the last 100 and some days. So I think that that's a different use case. So I kind of feel like it's an edge case, and maybe we're finding something out in the hinterland that is not working on Zoom. But it's one of the reasons that we're moving towards getting out of the Zoom registration process, is because I don't feel like I have enough control.
Well, I think that's, the same bug that they had with where people couldn't get in that one Monday with the authentication server.
I don't think it's the same
up there or something.
It's not. I don't think it's it's not the same. But there is something going on with the membership access or the list access that I can't. Like I have a big event today with 500 people, and I'm very concerned that our QA is going to be very high. Our QC is going to be very high.
I did the pull down menu, just using the same ID, in the memory, and it gave me that message. And then of course the same ID in the email saying, can I run your app? It gave me that message. So it's a matter of whatever says that's a valid meeting and you could wait for it wasn't there,
Yeah, I don't know. There is something going on, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is yet. So we'll keep on looking at it. Next question.
Brandon Berg is in with, for office hours, should I be getting better quality on YouTube than I am as an attendee in Zoom?
Yes, you shouldn't, but you are. so the Zoom is delivering it to you at 640 by 360, and the stream is delivering it at 1920 by or 1280 by 720. So it does look better on YouTube or in the desktop version of Mukana than it looks as an attendee inside of Zoom. And I don't know when that will change. It looks much better for us in the in the panel, but that has to. I'm sure that has to do with infrastructure and everybody using it. So eventually, I'm sure it will come up. But right now, the best viewing experience from a pure resolution perspective is on YouTube or the Mukana desktop. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I found that if I'm just an attendee, that running the Mukana desktop and then casting the YouTube feed in Mukana desktop to my big screen TV gives me a fabulous image and great sound.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good idea. Next question.
James Babbitt is in with, when somebody on a Zoom meeting has a poor internet connection, sometimes a host will have everyone turn off their camera.
I think we already got this one. I think that.
Did that not get clicked?
Yeah, we just touched on that one.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yep. John Giovanni Prato from the panel again says, Alex, I was wondering how your Twitch experiment went yesterday. I was in meetings until 4 p.m. and couldn't join.
It went well. We were testing. So we're looking at some events that we need to make sure we can grab comments and put them into graphics. And so, I like to test everything with live ammo. And so I try to figure out, like, how do I do something that really requires me to do it? And was left with a couple things. Number one is an incredible respect for gamers on Twitch. It was very hard for me to play the game and talk to people at the same time. Now, there were some ergonomic issues that I had, which is that I had the iPad. We kind of cobble, it's in the middle of us doing a lot of other things. And so we were trying to figure out, I was going to stream it myself, and then I was going to run it through a link to AWS. And then we realized to do the graphics, we had to run it through our main system. So we were running like SDI cables across the office and trying to get them into my office. And so there was a bunch of other things that we were dealing with that had us not spend a lot of time on the ergonomics of me playing. And so, first of all, the iPad was down here, so I was constantly going like this, which didn't work at all. So it needs to be right under the screen. I really want a telestrator for the gaming, so I'm going to work on getting the output of it to go through my ATEM and then into a Wacom tablet, so that I can draw on it. So I'm talking about the game and I go, okay, here's the theory of this is why I'm doing what I'm doing and everything else. And I can do that because the only game I know how to play is I only play for the last 20 years. All I play is desktop tower defense. So I don't do anything else. I just do some version of that. And so from a gaming perspective, I don't know how interesting it is to watch, but from a gaming perspective, it's easy for me to draw on things and talk about them because there's a lot of you set things up and then wait and then set things up and wait. And it just happens to be the way I like to play. So anyway, so overall, though, I found it to be almost impossible to play. The way I had it set up, it was almost impossible to play the game and talk to people. So I got to work on that. I also realized that the comment management is more important in Twitch because I want to be able to get a heads up display of what my producer is sending me to look at, not just the raw chat. The raw chat is not particularly useful as a game player to because it's too many things going on and there's too many emojis and things that I have to read through. So to what I was figuring out was that for gameplay, and I'm going to be doing a lot more Twitch experiments because I've been interested in it, and we're getting asked to think about more game stuff. And so I will say that when I look at how much some of these gamers are playing it and they're doing it all by themselves, I did have a feeling of like, because we had a couple people working on it. And I was like, money, why are you continuing to do it by yourself? Like, why not put money into making it a great, great experience where it's more produced and more, takes even more out of your schedule. But that's a whole nother curiosity. I do appreciate everybody who came up and experimented and sent us comments. What we really needed were comments, because we were trying to figure out, like, we found out that, some of the avatars were getting picked up and some of them weren't. The emojis generally don't pass through to vMix. So vMix, at least what we were doing with vMix, we were using vMix essentially as the graphics generator. So we were using the vMix social tools to pull all the stuff out of Twitch. Then we were outputting just the graphics from vMix as a key fill into a constellation. So we weren't trying to run the show in vMix. We were trying to just generate graphics from it. And what we found was that almost all the, except for the most basic emojis, almost all the emojis don't pass to vMix. And that it was a little cumbersome to move things around the way we had it set up, at least in vMix, but that's not a big deal. We would normally have it set up. Otherwise, the vMix stuff worked relatively well. Still low frequency, I don't think it would work well in some of the events that we've used our app on, because there's not really a lot of, at least I couldn't see a lot of ways to automatically filter a lot of the comments. Like we filter out in Commenda, which is the sister app to Mukana. Commenda will filter out 85% of the comments on the way in. So the moderators don't even see them. Like they just, it's just, there's most of the junk that's in the comment system is invisible to us. So we really are only working with usable, but we're working on, 500 interactions a minute and above oftentimes. And so that is it's a different beast, as far as how to handle it. And so anyway, so I think that overall, as a first test, as I built my Twitch handle and 2 hours before I went live and we tried it, I think it was a reasonably good test, and I plan to do more of it. I know it'll be absurd, but I probably be the largest streamer of Kingdom Rush on Twitch within the next month because nobody's doing it. So I found a niche that nobody's interested in. We'll see if we can make it interesting for people. I'm not going to try to learn a new game. I don't play enough games to. And the reason, by the way, I don't play games. It's not that I don't play games because I don't like them. I don't play games because I like them too much. It's like an alcoholic looking at stuff. Like I played games as a child. I played games for days, we sat down when Doom came out. 4 of us sat down and started playing Doom at 8 o'clock on a Saturday and finished it. Like literally did not get up, did not eat, we got to the end of it in one day. And so it's not that I don't like playing games. I can't allow them to fill up too much of my time. And Kingdom Rush is bad enough. So anyway, so the overall though, I did think it would be fun to play Kingdom Rush for 5 hours a day and just get paid for it. I don't know how to do that, but I was like, I can see why gamers would. This is a fun job to have. Anyway, that's my experiment. That's my 2 cents of it. We'll keep on doing it. I do appreciate everyone jumping on, and if you want to watch me play Kingdom Rush and talk about it, then I will be doing it probably at least once a week just to keep testing the system and moving it forward. All right, thanks. All right, next question.
Stan Chen is diving deep into audio here. Is it better for non-audio? Which is better for non-audio engineers? Izotope Ozone 9 Advanced versus Fabfilter Total Bundle if you had to choose one to build your audio chain from. The AI features in Ozone 9 seem to be magical, according to some audio engineers, but many say Fabfilter's plugins are the best for control.
Go ahead, Mickey. Mickey has an opinion.
Yeah, they're two totally different products. Ozone is designed for mastering music, and what do you call this? The Fabfilter Total Bundle, which includes every single Fabfilter plugin, gives you individual inserts. Like you have several different kinds of compressor, several different kinds of EQ. There's saturation plugins there. You could do a lot with the Fabfilter. So I don't know what Stan is trying to process. Stan, is it your dialogue chain, your speech
Yeah,
chain?
just the dialogue chain. It's going to
Yeah.
replace audio hijack and
I don't think, like, say if you get Fabfilter, I mean, between the two I would suggest Fabfilter, just because Izotope is just Ozone is just like you throw or an already mixed track in it, and then it spits out a master track that's designed for, like, Apple Music or other distribution platforms. So between the two, I would suggest going with the Fabfilter bundle, just because it gives you so much more control and you can really dial in what you want, and it's really designed to do what you're trying to do.
can it complement the post-production suite that I just picked up?
Yeah, definitely. Because, like, say for example, for Victor's chain, I'm using Fabfilter EQ. We set his chain up with Fabfilter EQ and compressor and limiter, and, like, if you want to also put a noise reduction insert in the chain, you can put your post-production suite to use as well.
Great. Next question.
Tony Mobley asks, is there an office hour recommended Ethernet cable for home use for Zoom? Amazon brand? Question mark.
Go ahead, Colin.
I would go with monoprice, solid core. Make sure you're buying a Cat 6 cable. You can get them on Amazon at varying lengths. You can get them as reels of 1,000 feet if that's what you need. If you feel like terminating it yourself, terminating cables is not as hard as it sounds. It's worth it if you're going for several hundred feet rather than to buy several hundred feet worth of an already pre-terminated cable. I don't know what else do we want to mention here. Cat 6 has a spreader in the core of the cable, so don't bend it quite as much as Cat 5 cable, as in at like a 90-degree angle, that sort of thing. But yeah, those are my recommendations anyway. I just, office hours as a whole have a recommendation. I don't know.
TJ?
I hardly second that nomination for monoprice cables. Love them. I hate putting ends on cables. I can do it. I've got all the tools needed. I detest it. I will buy a 50-foot or 100-foot run rather than have to do that myself. I have a spool of 1,000 feet of cable. I hate putting cable ends on.
When I say I hate putting Ethernet cables on. I find both XLR soldering as well as SDI termination to be kind of therapeutic. Like I can get into a good audiobook or some good music and just sit there and just roll. And I love doing it. And it's just very fun. I do not find any of that with Ethernet cable. Like I would rather pay 3 times as much not to do that. Like it's just such a horrible.
I guess at some level it's fair to say that if you're not sure of what cable to buy, then you probably shouldn't be considering terminating things yourself.
Pain in the neck.
But with that said, there are new full pass-through terminations that make it quite a bit easier than
it's easier, but
days.
I have the pass through, the easy ends or whatever, and I
that's
still
what they
don't
call
like
them,
it.
yeah.
Like I'm just still like, oh, this is just and Yeah, yeah.
The difference in price, I mean, you might pay double the price, but it's still
maybe double. It's still nothing.
It's still not worth considering if you don't have the tools. If you have the tools, it's always worth
Right.
considering.
The thing is the monoprice is so close to the cost. Like it's just
Yes.
so inexpensive. Like once I
Yeah.
realized how cheap they were in monoprice, I lost all interest because I was
Another
just like, it's
another
so
good
close.
place to look for these things, more adapters and patch cables and so on, is cyberguys.com. They're generally quite good.
Jeffrey and then Mickey.
So it also depends on where your router is or your switch is. If you're doing a cable, if you're doing a run and you're using like putting it underneath the carpet, you might want to get a flatter type of Ethernet cable so you can do things like walk over it without having that big bump in the carpet. And of course, if it's in another room, then we're talking about how do you take the cable from your computer to that router, and that that could also involve putting patches into the wall. But yeah, it really depends on how long of a run you need from your computer to your router.
And the one thing I will say is if you're ever building anything, conduit is a good thing. Like, building some kind of cable paths between all your rooms, not knowing what that is. I mean, worst case scenario, the house that I bought happens to have a server room and Ethernet to all. It was a CTO that owned it before me, and he went through the trouble of putting all that stuff in, and it makes life a lot easier. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of brands, I'm a big fan of Belden for all sorts of cables, including Ethernet cables. If you are going to be running Ethernet through your walls, I would suggest going with at least Cat6a, Cat7 if you can, just because if you're putting holes in your walls, might as well do something that would be long term, run something that would go long term. If you have to run cables outside of your house, like through the sneak them through the wall outside just to easily get them from floor to floor, use shielded cable.
I go John Edelson
to protect yourself from lightning strikes.
Yeah, John Edelson.
We had a strange troubleshooting because the person claimed that they were using a hard wire, but we were having really strange network, and it turned out they were using one of those devices that used to come with some cable systems where you could do Ethernet over power lines. And so it had a transmitter and one AC plug and the other. And it took us a while before we figured out, are you sure you're directly hooked up? If you see those, take them away immediately.
There you go. TJ.
It's worth the extra 10 or 15 cents to get the snagless cables. They just got a little thing that covers the clip that locks in. Totally worth the 10 cents it costs extra.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
James Babbitt says, I manually edit out coughs and mispronunciations, but a program such as Descript can edit an audio file by changing the text in a transcript and by typing different words in the transcript. Descript can add the words to the audio. Are there automatic editing programs that you would recommend? And we should start by mentioning our friends at Lumberjack and their Builder product, maybe.
Does Builder product? I don't know Builder.
Builder is a text. Phil and Greg have coded in a textual thing that's linked to your video, and you can edit the script, and it edits your video by editing the script.
And Simon says .ai does that as well. And so there's a couple of them. That's the one I've used. And you have your Final Cut project, and you push it, and I think it works with a lot of other things, but it'll push it to the web, or it'll come back with captions. Like all your captions and subtitles are all added right back into your project in those layers as an extension. And then, but if someone edits that text, you can have it do an assembly based on that, which, especially when you're doing interviews and documentaries, it becomes really useful because it's just like the producer can just look at it. They don't have to look at the video. They go, oh, I like that clip. I like that clip. I like that clip. They get the edit that they want, and then you can fine tune it from there. Sky, you were going to say something?
I was just going to be looking at, does Simon Says only work in Final Cut, or is it?
No, I think it's Premiere and Avid, and maybe even Resolve. Yeah, it does a bunch of different ones.
Thank you.
Yep. Next question.
Ed Steele says, which capture card would the group recommend for connecting a DSLR and or mirrorless camera for streaming?
I guess the question is whether it's a capture card or whether it's just an external capture device. So, generally most of our stuff is for cards or deck links. It's usually what most of us use from a cost perspective. Go ahead, Victor.
I'm using the little 3G recorder by Blackmagic right now. Is what you're seeing. coming out of the A10, and it's very flexible and seems to have good quality.
Okay,
And
Mickey.
it's only like $150.
Yep, Mickey.
Yeah, I've been using the AJA U taps for the past few months, and they've been pretty solid as well.
Yep, that's great. Jeffrey and then Beju.
One thing to think about is what type of connection you have. If you have a USB-A or a USB-C or Thunderbolt, you could try the mini recorders from Blackmagic. Elgato's got the Camlink 4K, which really work really well. And yeah, just try to stay away from the Amazon special bits and pieces. You know, the $35 ones, because they might work at first, but then an update on your Mac or PC, and then all of a sudden they're just not working the same.
And the biggest problem that we've seen with some of the cheaper digitizers is a lot of weird stuff with both compression as well as color, where things get kind of jacked up on the way through that don't look as good as some of the other options. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, second Mickey on the Ultra Studio U-Taps. It's the most rock solid card we have. We have that, the HM Mini, we're using Decklinks and Ultra Studios, and it's the most reliable one we have. The Ultra Studios and the Decklinks are great, but they are prone to issues, especially when Blackmagic updates the drivers. So you have to be very careful with any update to that. We just had two cards that were behaving really randomly till we rolled back the drivers. So that's something to keep in mind with those.
Yep. Next question.
Paul Edison Lamb asks, is there a way to correct wide angle distortion with the VDO 360? I'm tired of seeing my head look like it's inflated. Let me get that.
Go ahead, John.
My mouse is way over on the other side of the landscape here. I would bring it into OBS and then do my framing inside of OBS. That's how I resolve that issue.
Yeah, and we had folks from video on the jump on our panel, and I don't think that they're really getting that. You know, the new reality is people want less distortion, less wide angle, less. You know, like I don't feel like that really sunk in. Especially when people have spaces that they're trying to not show. You know, because what they need is about 55 degrees of a field of view is the right number, like in my opinion, 50 to 55, and we're just not seeing anybody go after that. The last one that we saw at that field of view was the Precision HD from Cisco, and it was perfect every time, and it had a 1-inch sensor, which was amazing, and it cost a lot of money. But now the drivers don't work on it, and it doesn't work with Catalina, but that's still the best webcam we've ever used as far as it goes, and that was 6 years ago, and no one's, Logitech is still the, and now that we're getting more Brios and kind of standardizing around those again, because it's 4K and it's still too wide angle, but we can cut in on it and it's still full raster. Next question.
Stan Chen says the Rolls MS112 XLR Switch doesn't seem to accept phantom power. The manual seems to be a bit vague on if it supports it. Is my unit defective? And I just looked down and my Rolls Switch is a 111 and passes phantom power perfectly. So I wonder if it's a model thing, but anybody else?
Anybody know? Might have got stumped on that one. No, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I was checking this out earlier when I saw the question pop up. It should be able to pass phantom power. Are you using the power adapter as well that came with it, Stan?
Yes, I am. For some reason, a non-powered microphone seems to work. So my RE20 just
it should be able to pass phantom because it says so in the website. They're quiet switching for both 48-volt phantom power microphones and dynamic microphones.
Might be a defect.
Yeah, I do know they're really good at customer service. So if you call them, and they even pay for one of the parts of the shipping, and I think it was like $10 for me to send something back and get it back in 3 days.
All right.
Next question.
We'll
Next question.
Moving on to A. Mitchell's. Hate buckles, especially the giant plastics clip-on style for porta brace. Man, I can't talk today. BDU belts and tool belts used to carry work gear. Any suggestions on a good grip AC belt to easily carry tools with a low profile closure that doesn't dig in as much? Thanks.
TJ Asher.
I'm a big fan of the 511 tactical belts. I have them and use them when I'm doing weddings. I will post a link in the chat.
I'm a big fan of 511 tactical. Like, I have so much stuff from them. For a long time, I had a Rush 24. I mean, that was our standard issue to every person. Like when you were hired at the Pixel Corps, it was like, here's your backpack. It was Rush 24. It's just a great bag, but I have so much of their stuff. They have, trying to think, down south, there's a store near one of our clients, and I just always want to get there early so I can go to the store and just wander around, actually touch the things. So not anymore, but in the past, it's a great, they have a great line of gear in general. Go ahead, TJ.
Quick aside, we have a new store, or it opened about a year ago, and I thought I was the only person that knew about 511 tactical in the area. I went opening day. There were 500 police and fire and EMT people there. I'm like, oh yeah, these people know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
Next question comes from James Babbitt. The new daily Discord link opens a valid version of Discord. Does a link from the past day open a valid version of Discord?
No, our links expire 30 minutes after 30 minutes after we build them, or they're designed to expire at 7 o'clock before the show.
It's worth pointing out, though, that the link itself is an invite link. It will give you a valid version of Discord. It simply won't let you join if you've not already joined.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so but our links expire in 30 minutes, so people have to do something with them or not. Next question.
A. Mitchells, has it been confirmed that the resolution in YouTube is actually better than what is hosted in Zoom directly? It appears
you don't need to read the rest of it. The answer is yes. It's been confirmed.
Okay.
That's enough of that. I mean, we do know it. It's Zoom does not give the attendees the same resolution as and we know that. And again, that's the way it is there. One thing to know is that we are going to be testing other platforms. Now, I'm not really I'm not a big fan of multicasting in general, but I want to see what happens on other platforms and see how it performs on other platforms. And so what we're going to do is stream to, it probably won't be next week, but it probably won't be until, my next couple of weeks are a lot of heavy production, but when we get out of that, what we're planning to do is start streaming probably to AWS, and then we'll push it to Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all at the same time. Like just push them all out. And what we want to see is what are our average view times, how many people show up on the different platforms, how do they look? All those things are going to be things that we're going to experiment with. It's just going to be a big experiment that we do for a while just to see what happens. Go ahead, John.
I'm in Stats for Nerds on Mukana desktop, and it says 720p.
Well, it's going to give 720p no matter what. The question is whether it's resing up a 640 by 360 and looking soft or not. But it does look like Zoom prioritizes that process. So, next question.
Chad Lafarge, have you found any sub $1,000 lens for Blackmagic 6K that's pleasantly surprised you at that price point?
Go TJ.
Blackmagic 6K has a Canon EF mount, and the Canon 50 1.4 lens is an amazing lens for like $400. It's incredible. To go to the 50 1.2 was like $1,200 extra.
And how much is 50 1.0?
Like $400 US.
I think 1.0, he said. 1.0.
1.0. Oh, you can't, if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
So what I would say at $1,000 for what we're doing here, not necessarily, for everything though. I think that the Sigma 24-70 2.8 is a really good lens. I think at B&H it's like $1,000. So that $1,099. Now, I do think that the Canon version of that at $1,700 is a better lens. It's a slightly sharper through the entire, through all the settings and zooms positions. But I will say that the Sigma is a very good lens at $1,000, and for what we're doing here. I generally have this thing where I have some specialty lenses, and then I have 24 to 70, 70 to 200, and then usually a 100 to 400 are the three that I kind of feel like cover a huge range of things that I need. And then 16 to 35 is really a good lens, you know, for Canon. And then I have lots of other lenses that you need for whatever you need them for. Go ahead, Garrick.
Yeah, I'm using a Tamron 24 to 70 2.8 that I'm surprisingly happy with. I'm usually one that buys a like the name brand lens for the camera. So my Canon gear is also, you know, for my Canon stills, it's a Canon lens. But for my 6K running through my Blackmagic Mini Pro, you know, I can defocus and, you know, have controls and things like that work really well. But my favorite lens of all for shooting on the 6K is the 35-2, which is a great affordable lens. I love using it.
Go ahead, Victor.
Sigma makes a version of this in Micro Four Thirds. I don't know if they have a Canon mount. It's a 16 millimeter f1.4. It's absolutely a wonderful lens. I really like it, and it's only $400 or so.
Good guy.
Yeah, I'd say the Sigma 18 to 35. That's what I'm using now, because the S35 crop factor, I mean, the 24 to 70 is a nice range, but if you're shooting indoors like this where you're going to be close, you want that extra wide, and because you got that crop factor, you're eating into it. I believe it's 1.4x, so 18 times 1.4, whatever that equals. You're still getting pushed in quite a bit. So 18 to 35 1.8 is like $699. So you got money left over for sushi.
That's good. At least one meal. All right, next question.
Hey, Mitchell's again. Has the number of characters available for recent questions changed again?
I don't think it has, but I'll talk to Chris about it. Chris and I push back and forth. Chris leans towards more characters, and I lean towards less. So, you know, from the fact that we have to read them out, I think that they should be 250. I think that sometimes I think that people just need to be succinct. You know, like the long ones may make sense, but they're really hard for us to read. And so I think that we'll keep on. I don't want to be over 300 at the max, and I think that's where we're at right now. I think that it's just, again, you have to think about it from our side that we have to read it, and generally more words just mean more convoluted. The questions get more convoluted. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If you ever compare the YouTube, what I'm doing in the YouTube side to the question, I'm basically right now, I'm copying that question over and I am just shortening the heck out of that thing. Yeah. And it still asks the same question. So if you really want to see how much extra stuff is in a question, you can just compare the two.
Good. Yeah, so look at Jeffrey's version of your question and use it as a lesson. All right.
That is actually great advice, because when I became a contributing editor at Videomaker Magazine, I would send my what I wrote to them off, and then 3 months later I'd see it on the newsstand, and what they had cut out was like going to school. It's like, oh, they shortened this. Oh, they rephrased that. It really made me better as a writer. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like, again, because we do this all day, every day, it's really worth not being conversational in your question and trying to be actionable in your question and just ask the thing that needs to be asked. Now, sometimes they're too short and we don't understand what you're asking. So you do have to think about adding the details back in, but we do recommend that you really think about that question so that it lands well with us. And it is a big advantage. It's one of the reasons we do tell people our clients, we're like, just don't bring people in to ask questions, because the one thing I will say is the number of questions that we go through is dramatically higher than when it's open question. Because when people get up to a mic, I've worked on, you know, thousands of live events over the last 30 years. And I can tell you that every time someone walks up to a mic, it's like an unknown. Like, I have no idea what that person's going to do. And 90% of the time it's not good. Like there's that 10% of the time where that person stands up at the mic and they get your heartstrings and they say just the right thing and their thing, and that's 10%. And I'm being kind. It's probably 1%. You know, 99% of the time it's someone pontificating about something that no one cares about, and everyone's just disconnecting until they finish talking. You know, and you know, because they spend the first 8 minutes of what was supposed to be a 1 minute thing talking about what they wanted to talk about. The only reason they're in line is to say their piece. Then they end it with a question if we're lucky. You know, and so the one of the big reasons, like when we started doing Q&A systems a long time ago, and we built one for the World Bank, I think within a year they got rid of mics in the room. We're not even talking about online. They just got rid of mics in the room because it was like they realized that they were getting better questions and faster. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the best thing to do is, and I pointed this out a few episodes ago, ask your question, put your notes afterwards. So if you do have to explain something like what kind of computer you're using or anything like that, you definitely want to have that. And I noticed the notes thing is gone because I'm assuming because nobody used it. But yeah, that's what you want to do is ask your question as quick as possible. And then if you need to put anything extra, put it after the question.
Well, no, I would sit there. I mean, what I would, what we hope people do as we think about this is all of us creating something that we're all getting smarter, is to think about those questions a little bit during the day of things that you don't understand and craft that thing up and just paste it in, you know? And so like, I'm thinking about questions. If I ask you guys questions, I'm usually thinking about the context of them and everything else the whole day, you know, like I don't understand this one thing. And so when I come up with a question for all of you, I usually have it, I've thought out what the things are I'm trying to figure out. I know that sounds like a lot of work for people, but the where you're going to get the most value out of this, I mean, if you're watching right now and if you're in the panel, where we get the most value is the thinking between these shows, between the sessions. The thinking that we have around it and the inquisitiveness of trying to figure it out is where you're going to get the most value from being here. Is the things that we talked about that you're not sure of, and knowing that there's a place that you can go to ask when you can't find it, and get, you know, I think, but trying to have some little notepad or somewhere that you can put those things down is pretty valuable. Anyway, I think we have one more question, and then I'm gonna have to leave it all to you. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
A. Mitchell's back kind of with a follow-up to that. Is it possible to unlock questions in chat once they're locked so that the host or by the host so that they can return to the voting pool? It seems that once they're locked, they also end up dropping to the bottom of the game pool. So they have less of a chance of being asked. Note, also good for the EDU session is right now it applies to all second hour questions.
I don't know where they drop. I mean, we answer almost every question. Like it's like there's not, we don't miss very many questions, so I don't think it's less chance. There's the question there. So I don't know if there's that much less chance. I mean, obviously, if you're in the negatives as far as the thing, it'll be at the last thing. It might answer it more quickly. But generally, we get to almost every question unless people get long-winded in the last 15 minutes. If you are an educator or want to be part of the education panel, go ahead and raise your digital hand and we'll bring you in.
Hey, Alex, sorry, I did. Are we only doing 1 hour of Q&A today?
It is as long as you guys choose to do it, because I'm going to leave it to all of you to run. So how long it goes is up to you. And hold on one second here. I'm going to see if Bill is willing to run in my absence.
I'll do my best.
All right. So I'm going to leave it to Bill to keep the conversation going, and I'm going to go to work. I got an event today, an educational event. So I'm going to go run that, and I got to get ready for it. It's at 10 o'clock, and I will see all of you. Thank you all for coming again, and hi to all the educators, and and thank you for coming again on Saturday. And I'm going to drop out now and let Bill take over, and I will see you all tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Alex. Have a good rest of the afternoon out there.
Thank you so much. And Mickey, if you can just ping me on Discord when the event closes. Zoom does not close. Zoom has a bug. YouTube. It will not close the YouTube event. So I have to go in and manually close it every time we stream to YouTube. It's a bug.
Copy that.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, bye.
Cool.
Okay, fair enough. So we need to do first the mic checks for the new arrivals. So I'm going to push it over to Mickey if Mickey is ready and have him run all of our teachers. Go for it, Mickey.
Alrighty. Hey guys, do you guys see the meters over here? Yeah. So yeah, if you guys see it, our goal as usual is to hit -20 on the short term. That's a number on the upper left-hand side. So let's start off with Emily and then move on to Chris Clark.
Good morning from Red Hook, New York. I am fresh off of a full week of school, which was pretty crazy, but not too insane. So we'll see what's going on. It looks like it's fluctuating in there.
Yeah, looks like you're right about there. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Chris and then Roscoe.
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona. This is Chris Clark. Looks like I need a little more input volume. Oh, no. calling from Tempe, Arizona, where we are at the end of the 4th week of online high school for grandchildren. And
Might need you to bump down a bit, Chris.
down a little bit, okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, down a little bit.
Split the difference on that change you did.
Say that again.
Split the difference on that change you did.
All right, okay. I've split the difference, and it could be closer to fine. There we go.
Sorry, go back up
Okay.
a little bit.
Up, okay. Yeah. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks way okay.
Yep, looks like you're there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roscoe, and then Bruce Francis afterwards.
Welcome aboard the Leaky Tiki. My name is Will E. Make It. Oh yeah, a little hot there today. Punch that down, and we'll keep talking here as we go around the first bend. Look at that. We have an alligator off to the left-hand side. Still a little hot. Coming down a little more. Wow, how did I get so hot? Okay, and maybe it's my volume going back to the old days. Yeah, there. Okay, still just right in there. It looks like it's holding on. I got to keep talking to get the meters. Yeah, I'm good.
All righty, thank you. Bruce and then Tony afterwards.
Okay, this is Bruce Francis from Naples, Florida, and I think I need to add. What is that? Do I need to go down when the number is low, right?
I think you're in good shape right there. We're
all right.
close
Good.
enough.
I'll leave it right where it is then. Good morning, everyone.
Alrighty. Morning, Tony.
Good morning from Atlanta.
Tony, we're hearing a return from you.
I have another device open. I'm closing it right now.
Copy that. And yeah, you need to go down in your level a bit.
Okay. So down.
Yes, sir. Down.
Okay, today it's kind of cloudy. The sun is coming in and out. It seems like
I think yeah, just the slightest nudge down even more, just the smallest change down.
so. Now's the sum of our discontent, made glorious summers by the Son of York in the deep bosom of the ocean buried.
Okay, yeah, undo that change. Sorry, go back up and undo that last change you did.
Strawberries are sweet. I like to eat them during the fall,
Go back up, Tony.
but they're actually out of season. Filmic Pro is a nice application to use on your iPhone.
Yeah, I think we're about there. Bill.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So as those of you who've been here on Saturdays or on the Friday education section know, we're here really to do one thing, and that's help people who are struggling with this technology in the education sphere, and that's the broadest definition of education, to try to get some answers so that they can make their lives a little easier. To that degree, what we're trying to do is have you guys drive this conversation by asking questions. So basically, that chat function that appears on your screens, if you would ask questions, and then equally important, everybody vote on those questions to push up the ones you're most interested in, and then we'll call on panelists and try to get you the answers that you're looking for. So looks like there's nobody else here unless, let's see, is there anybody else who's used to asking questions? I guess I'll read them myself and I'll see if we can figure them out that way. So the first question we have from Larry Jacobson is, would the Filmic Pro clean output wirelessly using a phone be a good second camera or an overhead or a whiteboard mechanism to be a good option for online classroom use? Anybody have experience using Filmic Pro in the classroom? Now, it looks like we're getting a 0 thing here. I can't imagine why it wouldn't work. I mean, most of us who have been playing with Filmic Pro, they just pushed a new update that allows a clean aperture, so no additional stuff, and you hook it up through lightning to HMI, perhaps into a little mixer, or there's a direct connection out. I see Garrick has an answer. So Garrick, dive in.
Well, I don't know if it's an answer, but I'm not sure that you can do it wirelessly. And that's what he asked in the question is clean output wirelessly. So you might have to use that as connect it with HDMI cable into some sort of capture device for it to work properly. But there are apps that you can use like Epoch Cam and things like that we've talked about before that would work wirelessly, I believe.
Fair enough. I do think Victor was talking this morning about being able to do that. But maybe somebody else wants to do that. Beju, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Victor mentioned using the Reflector 3 app, basically, which is a wireless screen mirroring app. So he was using that, I think, to bring it in. But that's still a bit more of a complicated, like as mentioned, that you could use Epoch Cam, you could use NTI Cam. If you're an iPhone, it's basically pretty stable. You can use that as well as a second camera.
Excellent. Okay, our own Chris Clark has the next question. I interviewed a college freshman and a high school junior about their first month of online school. They both report that the courses in which they are most engaged are the ones that employ breakout rooms. Any tips or cautions for teachers on how to ease into using breakout rooms? Emily, welcome. Good to see your smiling face this morning.
Oh, thanks. Good morning. So breakout rooms are hugely effective. And in K through 12, we've had a lot of like positive reactions from the students working in small groups and having that interaction, especially because they're missing that. One of the interesting complaints that I heard was that kids said that when they're in class, they have less opportunity to interact than when they're at remote, because some schools are doing a hybrid situation. And when they're remote, they can go into rooms and work with people. Whereas when they're in the classroom, they can't gather. So they have to do it through the remote. And so when you do a breakout room with your students, you're going to want to make sure that you set clear expectations before sending them into the rooms. Giving roles to people is really, really helpful. So like you're the note taker, you're going to be the one that's going to report out. You're going to be the timekeeper. Having a shared collaborative document between the students so that they can work on one document and you as the teacher can see what's happening on the document, even when you're not in the room, is another really great helpful tip. Don't leave the kids too long in rooms. Like depending on what they're going to be working on, make sure that you time it right. It's really hard to jump in and out of rooms to check to see what's going on, especially if you have like a class of 27 and you broke it up into groups of 3. Getting in and out would take like, and talking to the kids would take like anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes of logging out of a room, going back into another room, out of another room, into another room. But the breakout room feature does have the we need help button. So like you can moderate it and go into a room when kids have a question. But it's just, that is like the number one thing that we didn't have much experience with in the spring, but over the summer, people have really developed and put a lot of thought into on how it could be beneficial to our kids, and our kids are responding really well to it. Even the little kids. Little kids obviously need more. I shared with you guys that thread from the 2nd grade
it was
class.
Adorable.
It was the live tweet from the parent as it all went down, which was hilarious, but like that's what happens. So with the younger kids, you definitely want to have, if you can, using teachers' age or other employees in the building that are free to monitor some of those smaller classroom groups, or having the kids log off and wait their turn. So we've done small reading groups and set up a time. So it'll be like from 10 to 10:15, you're going to meet with the reading teacher, or you're going to meet with your teacher in a small group. And then the next group, you'll go do an asynchronous activity. Then you'll come back with the next group and kind of moderate it that way if you're short of adult supervision.
Do you think this has been happening long enough for anybody to get an idea of at what class size do you need to add TAs or other helpers because it just gets unmanageable? Or is it too early in the process?
I think it's a little too early. And I also think it has to do with the teacher's experience level. Some teachers are more comfortable with letting go. And then you have type A personalities who can't let go and they have to know what's going on and they freak out not knowing. They can't not know what the kids are up to. And they really, and it's not, I don't want to say that it's not a valid concern that the kids may be doing something inappropriate. I had one teacher email me and go, can I turn off the chat in Gmeet? And I'm like, no. And she's like, 62 messages and like 18% of them were completely inappropriate for school. And I'm like, well, you teach 10th graders, so you're going to have to set up that expectation. You know, they're old enough to know. But it's definitely, you know, in that situation, she might want to have a TA that can jump into some of those rooms with her so that when they're off on their own, they're not getting too crazy without her.
How do you do the glare at inappropriate behavior?
The eyebrow, the eyebrow. Like I raise the eyebrow and I'm like, are you serious right now? And they just know, but you know, you don't get the eyebrow in a breakout room.
Okay, anybody else have a comment on this, or should we move on to the next question? All right, let's pop over here. Bruce Francis in Naples says, I have read that social studies or social media apps such as TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook can be used to disrupt the status quo of instruction. Is this true? Does anyone know of any examples? And please comment if you do. Anybody? Oh, Emily's back. Good, excellent.
So I don't have any good examples of it working yet. However, there are educators out there, and the reason I don't is because of privacy laws and age, and you can't in the state of New York tell students they have to sign up for TikTok or Instagram or any of that. You can't do that. So we can't use that really as a tool. However, if kids are already making those videos, you know, you can use that in an assignment kind of way. Like, can you use TikTok to explain this concept or show learning or show how this science experiment would work? And kids have really, you know, figured it out, and like, they're not that excited to do it if it's not something that interests them. But there are a few kids out there that have made some interesting videos, and Chris Emden, Dr. Chris Emden, out of the teaching college at Columbia, he talks about this a lot, and he has some really great examples on his website and on his Instagram and things like that of kids creating when we let them do what they know how to do instead of forcing them into a box.
Excellent. And you can probably toss that in the Discord, right? Bruce Francis, go ahead. Whoops, you have to unmute, Bruce. So
Okay.
your Zoom mute. There you go.
I'm the one just asked that question, and one of the things that interested me about it was that back when I was teaching graduate schools, I always thought I would set up a Facebook group or something like that for that kind of thing, but I didn't really ever do it. And the thought occurred to me that we have all of these techniques that we are now developing, and Facebook itself is so free and open, so able to handle intra-student communication between the faculty and the students and all of that, that why hasn't it, is it because it's so open and unprivate and that the teacher needs much more control? Those are the kinds of things that led me to ask that question. I understand about things like TikTok and all of that, giving the opportunity to create new things, but that open communication that we seem to want, do we want it really, or do we just want to do it in a controlled sort of way? So that was the motivation for my asking about Facebook particularly and how it might be used.
John, you had a hand up?
Well, Facebook is somewhat dangerous and can become toxic. Emily raises her hand. An application that I use is one by Ali Jafari, and it's called VCN. I mentioned it before. And VCN is really a combination of sort of a LinkedIn, Facebook, an e-portfolio tool, and a course management system. And you have less of the politics, the less of the ads. And it's very effective there because it's really great. Essentially, we have a model of this right here because we have our face-to-face synchronous event. We have the chat going on during the conference, but you can look at it later. And then we have what's our Discord going on.
Yeah.
So the CN sort of puts those all into one thing, and it and it's been very effective there. But Facebook just has way too much going on, and with the ads, and now coming up to a political campaign. Emily could probably talk to this, but it gets pretty scary. I can't imagine in the K-12 community, we have challenges where we've been using some of it in higher ed. And the students in higher ed are doing it on their own sometimes because they are in Facebook. But if you want to use it for your class, I would look at the CN and set it up there.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, second the Facebook comments. Facebook can get pretty toxic, but in addition to that, majority of K-12 kids will laugh at you if you suggest that they have a Facebook. They are strictly off. That's for old people. It's not for kids, so they're not into that. Even like 10 years ago when I was in the classroom, my kids were like, yeah, no. And they were moving over to Snapchat and Instagram and things like that. We do set up ongoing, like what we call back channels. So using something like Padlet, where you can have a private account where the kids can have conversation, can happen. There used to be something called back chat where the kids could like basically ask questions, post questions, have conversations, kind of like a Discord. You end up running into issues of like for K-12, it has to be walled in and monitored. And it's not so much that we want to have control over the kids and what they're saying, as opposed to the privacy of those students and where it can, like, what else are they getting exposed to by being part of that community like Facebook.
Chris Clark, and then going over to John. Go, Chris.
Thank you. Bruce, I was a graduate school teacher and a graduate student for way too long. And what I remember is the value of those study groups and conversation groups. A lot of it had to do with self-selection. And we, the group, selected each other and where we were going to meet and, you know, whether we'd be drinking beer or coffee. And so my sense is that today, we want to encourage students to quote unquote get together and connect and help each other and teach each other and learn from each other, but back away from the decision about exactly where and when and how, what medium they use to do that getting together.
John?
Yeah, just an observation. I think it's funny because these kids learn several, dozen dance challenges on TikTok, but now all of a sudden virtual school is too hard for them. My parents would have got the wooden spoon out by now.
I think that resonates with a lot of people here. Okay, moving on. Donna Shanklin asks, if you have two wireless mics on the same channel connected to iPhone, will it record both audios? Used a dual mic on one wireless receiver and got static due to movement of cords while conducting a walking tour. So who wants to handle the technical stuff about it? Do we have any of our audio people still left in here? I mean, generally, oh no, Mickey's here. Of course, Mickey, pop in.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what wireless system Donna is using, but if it's a traditional like UHF wireless system, you cannot have two transmitters on the same frequency, because if you have a listening, just make sure you turn down the volume because it might hurt your ears.
Yeah, we had that problem in just regular ENG video production in the past. You get too many systems operating the same frequency. There are all sorts of problems. Guy, go.
Yeah, I think she means channels as far as left and right. So if it got embedded on and muxed into one mono side, like both wireless mics came in on the left channel, then it's embedded in. Yeah, it's in there. You can't get it out. Whether if it's on left and right, channel 1, channel 2, you can separate them in some kind of app, like even iMovie, I believe, would allow you to separate mono, left, right, and then you can clean it up and delete the static on the channel that has it.
Yeah, traditionally, just in terms of regular audio knowledge, if you take two mono signals and sum them together, you're very dangerous territory, because if they get out of phase, you end up with no signal. So not marrying two mono signals is generally a best practice. Anybody else want to get in on this? Nope. Okay, so looks like we're moving on to Roger Miles. Talented high school sophomore from Windows literate family, uses Chromebook for classes, wants to take graphics design and video production classes using Premiere Pro and Mac. What is the minimum MacBook Pro that they should get to last 3 years of high school? Anybody want to do system config? Brian Anderson, and then Garrick, and then Mickey, go.
So you had Pro in parentheses as if, do I need a Pro? And yeah, you need a Pro. The Pro versions all have what you would call discrete graphic cards rather than the built-in Intel graphic cards. So an AMD GPU, graphics processing unit on it. And that is going to be required for some of the things you do, this kid would do in the Adobe apps. Get the best one you can get. For sure you want a Pro, so you get the discrete GPU. The other thing to think about is it doesn't take long to fill up those little SSDs. So if you can afford to get a terabyte SSD on that, you're going to be fine. And the other thing I'll say as a longtime Mac user, the part of the question about lasting for 3 years, you're absolutely going to last 3 years if you spend the money up front on a Mac Pro, because they tend to outlive a lot of less expensive Windows machines that I've seen over the years.
Okay, we're moving on. Who was it before Mickey? I'm sorry. Garrick, thank you. Garrick next, then Mickey. And then we'll get you Colin.
Yeah, minimum 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it's totally suggested that you get 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM for that. And your GPU should be 4 gigabytes of GPU VRAM. And a fast SSD card or fast SSD drive. I would recommend, if you're going to use Premiere Pro, to get a couple SSD drives and put your projects on one SSD drive. Keep your programs and your operating system on your internal SSD drive, and actually get a third SSD drive for your cache, and it will work really smoothly. That's a setup I use. So,
Mickey, then Colin. Mickey.
Yeah, just to comment on what Brian was mentioning, not all MacBook Pros have discrete GPUs, like the 13-inch ones don't. They have Intel GPUs. For a student, to be honest, like I would confidently say the cheapest MacBook Pro will last 3 years for a student. Like I mean, Jarek was mentioning like what he uses to do professional work, but for a student, the cheapest MacBook Pro should be able to do it. I mean, I was able, I went through film school with the old like original Core Duo MacBook white, and that got the job done. So the cheapest MacBook Pro, I mean, I'm on a 13-inch MacBook Pro right now, and I can play around with 4K material on this thing. It's not the fastest.
I'm astonished at how capable both the Windows and both PCs and Macs are now at the lower level. It's amazing. Colin was next, and then we'll go to Beiju.
I just want to accurately set expectations here. Both Brian and Mickey are correct. But I would say that if you're spending the most you can spend, and that's going to be for a top spec MacBook Pro within any given release cycle, as I have done for the last 20 years, you can expect 6 years of life out of the thing. Just to set expectations and pick a price point that works for you and amortize it over that period.
You're getting a lot of nodding on that. Beiju.
Yeah, I'll second Mickey that it's not necessary to get the 15-inch or 16-inch with the discrete GPU if you don't have the budget, because you're looking at around $4,000 on average for the top spec, unless you really add up the storage. You can get the 13-inch with the Intel Iris Pro, which is actually pretty decent. I got that for my wife, and she's doing basic video editing and stuff on that. One thing that you can do with the newer Macs is you can add an eGPU later on. So if you need further GPU processing power later on, you can add that for a reasonable price. Just get enough RAM. That's the main thing.
John Prado?
I want to make a notation here. Please note that Apple's coming out with Apple Silicon MacBook Pros here very, very shortly. In fact, they may announce them on Tuesday, but that's iffy. But before the end of the year, there'll be new MacBook Pros with Mac Silicon in them versus Intel.
And the rumors have they're
It's
going to
also
start.
worth pointing out, though, that those are likely not to be the top spec machines.
We don't know that for sure.
We don't know that for sure, but that I would not be frustrated to find that they're not the top spec machines, that they're maybe all the 13-inch machines.
They have said officially, though, that they're going to support the Intel machines for the next 5 or 6 years. So
Yeah.
you're still going to be safe. Emily, did you have something you wanted to toss in on that?
The only thing I just wanted to remind them that the Apple educator discount, there's an education discount, and I believe it's 18%. And so if you're going to go in and get something for your high schooler, definitely ask for the education discount and you'll get it. It's very easy to prove.
Yeah. Bruce and then Roscoe.
Yeah, well, I heard that one point about enough RAM. What is enough RAM if you're going to buy
As much
a
as you
machine?
can get in the machine.
It's an oxymoron. It's like enough cash.
Yeah.
Although it used to be that the limit was 16 gigs because there was an airline thing about they wouldn't let them on. That's gone. So 32 is pretty common these days. It's getting less expensive to get more RAM, but anything over 16, and I think you're fine. That's my guess. Was there somebody else who had a hand up, or should we? Oh, Brian, and then Roscoe was first, then Brian. So let's do Roscoe. Go ahead.
It's fine either way. Just real quick, Emily, I kind of already touched on it. Wander in, if you're anywhere near a college, wander into the bookstore. It doesn't matter that you have a high school ID. It matters that they sometimes have really good deals. They'll throw in some free iPods or AirPod ears and there's all kinds of free deals that the bookstores have, including the education discount. And sometimes they have really good specials on last year's model. Because the question here was, what's the least MacBook I can buy? There's a whole bunch with keyboard issues that I'd avoid, but I mean, you can go all the way back to a MagSafe MacBook Pro, and it would get you through a good film production class if all you're doing is narrative type editing.
Hey, Brian, did you have a comment you wanted to sneak in?
Yeah, absolutely true, Roscoe. I mean, you could buy used and they're still be great. Beiju's comment on buying RAM is probably the thing that if you're going to spend money, I suggested getting a lot of storage. The RAM thing is great because you can't upgrade that later. You can't plug in external RAM. And the specs on Adobe right now, they're saying to do 4K editing, I take this with a grain of salt, that you want 32 gigs of RAM. You could do it with less, but spend the money on that up front, and there's ways to do external storage.
I'm still trying to get over reading the words Windows literate family. I guess that's a new classification, a Mac literate family. Windows, it's like, can you speak Spanish? It's very interesting. All right, we're going to move on to the next question, which comes from Victoria Ray. Emily, can you speak to the efficacy of teachers recording students in the remote classroom? Is this a common practice to prove student antics, etc., in the K-12 system? Efficacy or efficiency? Oh.
Well, so I have some districts that automatically record every meeting for the students, and they do it under the guise of protecting students and teachers from what happens on the remote meetings. I find this a little interesting because when you're in a classroom in New York, they cannot film you. They can't require you to film your class, and mostly because of privacy for the students, but also a little bit for the teachers. However, I do have teachers recording bits so that they're able to prove that stuff happens. Different teachers have different thresholds of how they deal with that. So some will have a conversation with the student, some will have conversation with the parents and the student, some will contact, administration to have an issue. And then you have stuff like that issue in Florida at the end of the school year last year, where a teacher just called the police and said that the kid had a gun in his room. It was on his back wall and it was a BB gun, and the police showed up to the house to search for a gun. So, it's all about communication and community and having conversations. So, as far as the efficacy go, it's a really gray area in the sense of you can record it. Where you put it, what you do with it is very important, because if it gets out of your hands and out on, like, if you don't want to live stream it to Facebook or YouTube or anything like that, obviously. But like even that coming out and being used, teachers are afraid it's going to be used against them. But then what do you do if a kid's acting out? How do you prove it when the kid's like, I didn't do that? So there's all sorts of crazy, I think it comes down to classroom management. But as far as would I feel comfortable being recorded 24/7? No. And I would want my students to feel comfortable talking in the classroom. And I feel like some of them would clam up as soon as they see the little red light saying that they're being recorded, that they won't say what they think, and we won't have real conversations in the classroom. But if I had a problem, the record button's there, maybe I could record it. We do record the chats because the chat is something that we often have to address and be like, no, you said this, it was not appropriate. And have those conversations.
A lot of stress out there. Before I go to Bruce, you're coming up next, I just wanted to remind everybody that we're low on questions now. So this is an excellent opportunity. If you have questions about anything in the educational space, ask them now. And for those of you, there's 100+ people here, vote them up. The questions that you resonate most with you can move them to the top and we'll get to them faster and we'll take longer time with them if you do that voting. Bruce, go ahead, your comment.
Yeah, I want to go a little further on this question of being videoed. It seems to me, and I think I may even feel pretty much the same way, that we in the United States are rather paranoid about being seen, about being recorded. And I wonder, is that true for the rest of the world? We have Beju, I know it's somebody, but is there anybody that can talk to how it's done in Europe, in Australia, in India, in other countries where I understand in Britain, for instance, that there are TV cameras almost everywhere and people seem to get used to it. And I'm just wondering if we're not particularly paranoid in the United States.
Yeah, I have a friend in the industry in London who talked at length with me about the fact that, especially downtown London, unless as you go out, but in the core of London, you literally cannot be in public anywhere that you're not surveilled by some sort of camera system. And for them, it's just the normal. But I'd be interested in hearing from other people around the world too, if anybody has any experience in that. Beju, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, so my teacher's my wife's a teacher at a K-12 school here. So she's doing class 11 and 12. So one thing that's really happened in the last few years is that it's becoming really common to put CCTV cameras in classrooms, not just for administration, but also for parents' access. That's a bit of a hot topic right now, but a lot of schools are putting CCTV cameras and parents actually have access to it so they can see it. There is state governments, like the government for the state is basically mandating putting CCTV cameras and making them available for parents. So that's a bit of a going that the parents want to see what's happening in the classroom because
that's
there is an issue of
usually common in daycare here, but I haven't seen it when you get into formal schools. But
yeah,
I don't know.
It's more of an issue for government schools here where the teaching quality can really vary. Like, I don't know if you're familiar, like in India, we basically have the government schools, which is public schools, I think, in the US, and we have public schools, which are private schools, basically. And normally the quality difference is a lot between them. But so in government schools, we have a lot of fraud at times, and the teaching quality can vary extremely depending on which area or which town or it is. So that's one of the reasons for the CCTV cameras. For going back to the original question about recording in Zoom and stuff, it's pretty common, and they are requiring it basically just to make sure of what's happening, what the teachers are doing the right thing, and the students are doing the right thing. Like as mentioned, the students will say, no, we didn't do that. And often you have parents sitting at home and they'll often be making something really odd comments or something odd's happening. So admin wants some backup on what's happening if they need to take action.
Cool. Okay. Are we moving on? I think so. Anybody else have a comment? Okay. Mickey is in with, is Uni really USD 60 over there? That's sad. Mickey, what did you mean?
Yeah, that's just sorry, I thought we were running low on questions earlier. I was just commenting on the pre-show discussion wherein Alex mentioned that Uni is $60 there.
I'll look up my place right now and let you know how much it is.
Because yeah, like here it's like, we get sea urchins from the sea and it's like less than 80 cents. Like
we've evolved back to a conversation of sushi prices global. Well, this is an economics question maybe. All right, let's move along. Peter Collins asked, can we get more from Chris on what students are saying about their experiences this fall? Future education panelists? Anybody have anything? Chris, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I'll try. The students I have the most access to are my grandchildren who live under our roof, and they don't talk a lot about it. They respond to questions with very brief answers. It was okay. It was fine. But there's some unobtrusive measures that are relevant. They've both painted and decorated their bedrooms from which they access schooling, and are very conscious of arranging things and arranging themselves so that they have privacy. They're able to close the door without having grandpa look over their shoulder during the school day. And they're, generally speaking, they are engaged. They're interested in giving brief reviews of whether the AP English teacher is really eager to engage them and get them writing independently. And the high schooler is in an art class where she finished an assignment, a self-portrait assignment very quickly, quicker than the deadline. So the teacher saw that, and she turned it in early. So the teacher said, "Oh, well, let's make this the first of a series for you. Since you finished so quickly, why don't you do 3 more and we'll see how it evolves." So that was a good example of the teacher being alert to what is this student going to do while her classmates are more slowly producing just one self-portrait. So it's you get it sort of an insight about how the teachers are or are not adjusting and being flexible and thinking about individual students as well as the whole group, and doing curriculum that in a sense they've had to adapt on the fly to take account of the limitations and the possibilities of this different medium that everybody is, relatively speaking, a novice at.
It's interesting. I have a, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
Finish.
No,
Or Chris?
continue.
I have a 15-year-old niece in San Francisco, and it was interesting to me that she built an entire nest essentially at home for doing her Zooms out of. She's highly sensitive to the environment that she's projecting out to the world. And that's something I had not ever seen in kids before. So it's interesting. Emily?
So my nephews live in Connecticut, and they went back. They have a hybrid system where they're in school on Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesday is completely asynchronous, and then Thursday, Friday is virtual school. And I asked them how it was going. So one's in 2nd grade and the other one's in 6th grade. And they said that, they're glad to be back even with all the restrictions because they miss seeing people in person. Their teachers have been highly adaptive because they're split. So, there's 20 something kids in each class. And so half the kids come in on the Monday, Tuesday, and half the kids come in on the Thursday, Friday. She made them bracelets, and it was like, even though we all can't be together and some people are fully remote, here's a bracelet and we're all connected. That was the 2nd grade teacher. And it kind of is creating this idea of community, even though we're not all together. And she made some cute little poem. And if I can find it, I'll throw it up on Discord about like how it brought them together. And then someday in the future, they'll all be able to be in the classroom together, hopefully. But the older one said it's a lot harder because he moved into the middle school this year. There isn't that socialization. So his classes are mixed up with kids from different buildings. And so he doesn't have friends in his classroom. And so when you ask him like, well, did you meet anybody? He's like, no. He's like, when am I going to meet anyone? We're not allowed to like be within 6 feet of each other. Our desks are so pushed apart. We don't even eat lunch together. Like, it's just, he's kind of like, about it. And then my cousin's kids who are in upstate New York went back, and they're also doing a hybrid situation. And the high schooler said that when you're in the classroom, it's worse than being at home because you can't hear what everyone's saying because of the masks. It's hard to hear the teacher. Everybody's spread out. And when you try to do group work, you can't do it as a group, or small group work. You have to get online to meet with the person sitting across the room from you. So she's like, I just don't understand why I'm here. Why can't we just be at home? Because this is stupid. And so it's kind of like, all over the place as far as how they feel about it. And I think age really does matter when it comes to it. And then as an aside, Connecticut yesterday started posting multiple schools are having outbreaks. So now they're quarantining classes and they're sending the kids home for 14 days. Anyone who spent 15 minutes with someone who was positive has to quarantine for 14 days. So there's like, oh, second grade's out for the next 14 days. But the siblings can come to school. The parents don't have to quarantine, but all the kids have to go home from that classroom and can't come back for 14 days. So they go completely virtual while the rest of the school comes in. And it just seems like highly disruptive to me. Like there's not going to be a rhythm that the kids can rely on. And if there's no rhythm, especially for, the kids that need consistency, it's going to be really tough to make big academic gains or normal academic gains for the school year.
So many of us who are not in education are looking at it, and our hearts go out to those of you who work at it, because we know how stressful this whole thing is, which is why I love Guy's question, which is up next. What are some wins that anybody is seeing this semester? Is anything working, and what is working? Because there needs to be some positivity here. Roscoe, dive in.
Oh, my favorite comment so far is we have the student, we're meeting outdoors. So we have this nice TV studio, but we said, we're going on location. So they bring their own chairs, and we're sitting, I wish I had a picture I could show you. We're sitting on chairs. We're all on these beautiful hills. The campus is beautifully sculptured with these nice rounded hills. And the student leans in and she says, I love it. It's just like being at camp. And I'm like, cool, we've won. So
excellent. Anybody else have any, even little anecdotes that don't obviously disclose anything, but anything that's working in your meetings, or anybody saying this is challenging, but no? All right. Well, it's early in the process. Hopefully, as this moves along and everybody gets through the shock of having to do everything so differently, those wins will show up. That'd be great. Brandon Berg has the next question. What is the top mistake thing to avoid that you've seen and would advise teachers who are just getting their terms started? Top couple of things that, Emily, go for it.
Learning to let go. I think that the teachers really need to let go of that super control and be willing to see where something goes. I'm not saying that they should just, let, the tornado happen or anything like that, or the tsunami of craziness, of chaos. But at the same time, I think, giving the students downtime to go complete an activity and come back and then share out, as opposed to trying to keep the kids online. Oh, and I saw this really great thing on Twitter this morning. Someone made a slide. I put it onto my Twitter, and it's a slide, and it's like, you can keep your Zoom on, but mute your camera, mute your mic. It's quiet work time. If you have to ask a question, unmute or chat with me, depending on whatever it is. And it was just a nice way to tell the kids that they need to, that there's quiet work time where they don't have to be online. They don't have to be there, but the teacher's there if they have any questions, which is kind of cool.
I'm interested in a generic sense, do those of you who teach actively, are you feeling like you're getting enough of that kind of broad-based flexibility and support from the administrators in the district and the rest of the stuff? Or is it still they're trying to control and herd the cats, so to speak? Chris, go ahead.
A couple of things. One that's responsive to this question, but also to Guy's earlier question, which is the high school district locally did online teaching for 2 weeks straight, 5 days a week, and with the normal bell schedule. So basically 6 hours a day. And some smart person realized that was too much. So their adaptation was to declare that Wednesdays, which had historically been an early dismissal day with professional development opportunities for teachers in the afternoon, Wednesday was taken off the page. There was no continuous synchronous online teaching and learning going on. The students had to log in at the beginning of the day at the regular time, 8 o'clock in the morning, and to check with each of their teachers to see what they had posted, which might be some kind of a thought experiment or assignment. But then the teachers and the students were off online interaction for all of Wednesday. So it gave everybody a chance to catch their breath, so to speak, and interact with one another in their own ways, and probably gave the teachers a great opportunity to interact with one another and to catch their breaths and share local success stories and crash and burn stories, perhaps, and how they might hit the reset button for Thursday and Friday and so forth.
So in that circumstance, it was 6 hours and 6 hours Monday, Tuesday, then the day off Wednesday, and then 6 and 6 on Thursday and Friday.
Yes, and it seems like it helped. I mean, obviously, it probably helped in terms of everyone realizing that, hey, this is really stressful to do 6 hours of continuous Zooming and interaction. It even relates to earlier conversations we've had here about getting a decent chair that that you can be in comfortably for 6 hours, and figuring out, how to not eat on screen and so forth and so on, or dealing with the issues of, well, everybody turns their camera off and I feel like I'm talking to myself. Can I continue to do this? So I need the feedback. Whatever the issues are that they're discovering, there's a chance to figure that out without exhausting yourself on the weekend as well. So anyway, that's a good example of, I think, a wise step taken by the local school district.
Very good. Bruce?
Yeah, at the college and university level, I think that teachers, and I don't know, we probably need some research on this, the teachers who typically lectured all the time, went into the class and presented their material as they always did before, now on camera, instead of to a large group of real individuals, and just do it on camera, are probably having more trouble that we don't know about yet. But one of the most interesting things for me is, what are the student assessments of teaching going to look like at the end of these first quarters? And I can imagine that if the universities will use it constructively, there'll be some enormously interesting information from the reactions of the students, particularly to those traditional professors who just get on camera and lecture instead of doing some of the things that we've suggested here, such as flipping and that sort of thing.
Interesting. The whole world's a lab right now in education. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge. When Guy asks a question, what good things are happening or what bad things are inverse. In California, we have 23 CSUs, we have, I think it's 117 community colleges, 11 UCs, and those are just the state-supported schools. So anything that you could think is happening is probably happening somewhere in a classroom next week, from the worst horrible lecture to a person who's just, the students feel this is the most engaging experience. I think that the challenge that our small subset of faculty that we meet on a regular basis is how to capture this data and how to step back and think about how would we do this. We were thrown into building the airplane while we're flying it, and that's an awkward way of doing it. I think there are lots of people within our educational faculty group that really felt, well, hopefully things will be better in the fall. Now that our CSU system has announced that it will probably be virtual or online during the spring semester, and some of the people are concerned whether it will really even be the following fall, then, how do we get people to step back and really say, if we were going to do this, what would we want it to be? And how do we get from where we are now in a panic mode to some sort of organization? The campus I'm on, CSU Monterey Bay, is 25 years old. It was this year. When the campus opened, it opened very quickly. It had 1 year of planning. Most of the campuses, when they were going to open a new campus, had a 5 to 10 year planning cycle. it turns out there's a reason they had a 5 to 10 year planning cycle. It takes that long to organize a university. When you do it in 1 year, a lot of things are happening very quickly. They fall apart. You have to change it. You have to modify it. It's both stressful and fun. We referred to our campus when we opened up as a startup campus. And right now, every classroom is very much like a startup organization. And the sooner we can, at least get some of us who are in this space to step back and figure out how we're going to solve these problems. And the biggest problems we're seeing are not technology, not the faculty being a good lecturer, bad lecturer, but the inequity of access and inequity of student resources and campus resources. And that's not a tech question. That's a political question on how do you deal with the inequities that we have in our educational system. Off the soapbox.
Chris?
Yes, there was an earlier question about what's working or success stories. And one bit of advice I have, no matter whether you're a veteran professor who is still lecturing or someone who is has flipped the classroom, is take the risk of thinking about teaching just one thing in each class or each interaction. What if there were only one thing in your notes or in your plan that you hope most of your students come away with, what would that be? And build in as many different ways of expressing and experimenting with that one thing as you can think of. That's different than the driven sense that many teachers experience of, I've got to cover the whole curriculum. There isn't really enough time. There's so many required or expected things to cover, micro skills and micro facts. So unwind that is my advice, and ask, well, if there were only one thing, what would it be, and how many different ways could I get students to, or invite students to become engaged with that one thing as possible.
Excellent. Tony, I saw your hand up a little bit earlier. Did you have something you wanted to contribute in this, or it was a while back?
I really just wanted to mention, and I don't want to be negative, but here in Georgia, we're having some issues with coronavirus on the major universities, like the University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, and Georgia State University Georgia Southern State University. So those are major universities in the state, and they're having significant outbreaks of coronavirus on campus, and they're doing a variety of different things to handle it. They're sending some students home. They are quarantining some of the students on campus. It's kind of serious and scary at the same time, and it kind of filters down to the local level, from the standpoint that on the news this morning we're talking about a paraprofessional who tested positive for coronavirus 4 separate occasions. And the reason why he tested positive was because he's trying to get a procedure done, and they can't allow him to have the procedure done while he tests positive. And the reason that I mention it is because the school system, or the local school, was requiring him to come to work even though he was positive. And so, to me, that's really scary, and that's not something that's really being talked about that much as far as main media. And I was just wondering what you guys thought in terms of the districts that you're in.
Does anybody have any direct things? And by the way, Mickey, I don't know if you can do it, but Michael Ball, who's often on the education panel, raised his hand, and I don't know enough to make him a panelist if that is appropriate. I would assume it is, because he's been here a lot and we know him. So good. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anybody else have any comments? I know we try to stay away from the political stuff, but this is health and safety, and I think that's perfectly appropriate at that level. Anybody else? Roscoe, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Are the colleges that are having the problems, are they fully back on campus? We're back with 1.3% of our student population.
Boy, that's surprisingly low. I didn't expect
They
so.
were-
That's the number of on-site.
No, I was saying that they were saying that it was a significant. They actually named the numbers. I can't recall exactly what but it was significant numbers, like 3,000 students at the University of Georgia. I'm not exactly sure, but it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah, I think everybody out in society is beginning to understand that and feeling very, very sensitive about that. Michael, did you come in to make a comment on that, or are you just joining us? And you're always welcome. Whoops, you're muted. And you're not on, so we're not hearing you. So there must be a double mute there.
That would be a sync setting on the mix pre. No, I mean, I was just joining in general, but my understanding is that most of the colleges with the most significant problems have, if not an entirely in-person cohort, a very large in-person cohort in terms of their campus. Alabama, I do know, was in person. And in particular, the in-personness varies, right? So they had open indoor dining halls, whereas many of the schools are doing things like dining halls are open for takeout only, that you might find at local restaurants, depending on where you live. So I think that does make a pretty wide variation in what the cases look like.
Absolutely. Bruce Francis, go ahead.
If I may, I'd want to go back to the point that Chris made when we was talking about things that might be a good idea for faculty. Chris, if I heard you right, it was take one topic and focus on it per lecture. I'd like to suggest also the possibility of expanding that idea to having faculty who typically lectured and covered not to so much worry about teaching their students, but rather focus on what their students need to learn over the course of a semester, and perhaps place a challenge assignment in front of them that is semester long or quarter long, that they have to accomplish an amount of learning, and then use the class time as office hours like this group here, or just the faculty member being available to answer questions and to guide students, maybe not even the whole group at a time, but maybe one at a time. But it would seem to me that this is an opportunity for faculty to experiment with using this technology and try out some of the things like we've been discussing here.
Cool. I don't see any other hands up. I know Alex has set this up to help, but that's the point of this for educators. So even though we've been through an hour, this is Saturday and we can go as long as we want. So I'm just going to keep things going and move the next question into the answer queue. And oh, did I hit the wrong thing? I hit answered. So let me see if I can go back and.
I'll handle those. Bill, you can
Thank
just
you.
concentrate on reading.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Guy. So Roscoe Jones is at the top of my screen now with what opportunities do you see in the new streaming world for recent college graduates? What skills would you try to teach to prepare them for working in online production? My waiter last night just got his graphics design degree and was asking me, who wants to talk about what skills this new streaming environment is promoting for recent college graduates who want to get into education, I assume. No one want to weigh in on it? John Idelson will dive in there. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to the last comment that Bruce had, talking about, and then I'll try to work that one. But you were, talking about having faculty, try to experiment and do new things. There's an organization called Quality Matters, and it's a professional development model for helping its K-12 higher ed, continuing ed, develop online training. And so it's a series of 7 courses you could get certified. The Quality Matters was used a lot within this California State University system when faculty members were moving face-to-face courses from face-to-face to online. And obviously this was not all the courses, but it really is well thought out. It has good educational science behind it, and it also chunks it into small professional development steps that faculty can use it. So if somebody's looking at how to improve what they're doing online, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Quality matters. I think there's 7 modules or 7 workshops, and at the end you even get a certificate.
Cool. Anybody else want to dive in on this? Roscoe, were you?
Well, I'll throw hovering around it. Well, yeah, I know it's a kind of a tough. It's a very broad question. I mean, how do you get into this? Because I used to say, well, gee, film and video production involves, artistry, it involves lighting, it involves computer technology, I mean, take the entire university, philosophy, storytelling, mentorship, all this stuff. So I guess you can come at it you can begin at any angle. The question is is there a curriculum out there, or what, have a kid go to computer science if that's what they're interested in? But this is an interesting media to figure out how to get into. And number one, sorry, my answer to him was go somewhere, come to office hours, make yourself useful. Just do graphic design for people. Just make yourself a useful person, and then, work will follow.
Okay, Michael, and then Brian. Michael, go.
Yeah, I think based on especially what Roscoe just said, especially if or a university where there isn't a specific program related to streaming, most of the students that I know that do something digital media related are applying their interest in their field to digital media. So I know a couple students who are computer science students, but they vlog their college experience. And then there's a few other students who I have I don't know personally, but I watch their stuff. And I think that, kind of encouraging them that they can apply those skills or the skills that they are learning in their actual degree subject to an online medium in some form, that they have something to share that way can be one way of getting into it. The other thing that I would remind them is that when they're at a university, as much as you're earning your degree, you're learning how to learn and try and new things and experiment. And that, there's no better time in college to try something that can fail, because hopefully for most of the students, what you're trying and failing at and learning from is not necessarily your primary source of income, and that you're in the environment that allows you to have a job or try a job that doesn't necessarily go somewhere before you actually need it to when you graduate.
I could have had a career in pizza delivery. Brian Anderson?
Yeah, in my day-to-day work, I have to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife, everything from graphic design to print to video and audio. And the video side of me was always shooting stuff and editing stuff and making final product. I didn't have the first clue about streaming media and switching live and all that kind of stuff. I'd never had to do it. Hanging out here was a whole lot of drinking from a fire hose, but I learned within a matter of a few weeks enough to be able to do an event with Memo that had, hundreds of people watching, and it wasn't perfect by any stretch, but just hanging out here, I learned a ton. And so those skills that I had, graphic design, Photoshop, Illustrator, and then video and editing, could be repurposed and applied. It is a different medium. And in my opinion, there's going to be a lot more demand. I'm seeing it already at the university. People going, we need to do a panel discussion, but we don't want it to look like the grid we're all looking at now in Zoom. We want it a little more interesting and have some lower thirds. So for a graphic designer to at least understand what those terms mean and how to make it happen, it doesn't mean they're going to be a video editor or they're going to be running Mimo or OBS, but certainly learning how to apply these skills they have to this new environment, I think would be really valuable.
It's technology for expanding human communication at its core. So that's the same thing. I love this. Victoria Ray says, I'm trying to lure a 5th grade teacher to participate in this panel. Any tips? What kind of sugar water can we put in the bird feeder to get the hummingbirds? Go ahead, Emily.
Just do it. I jumped in here with you guys, and I knew nothing about office hours the first time I came in, other than my husband had been listening to you guys in bed, the recorded YouTubes in bed, because he was changing over from live audio to broadcasting. And so he was getting tips from you guys and whatever. And I was like, what are you watching? Because every once in a while, you guys would say something that applied to what I do. And then you guys made a call out for teachers. And I was like, oh, I'm going in there because I just want to see what it's about. But my husband really did sit behind me the first time because I thought I was just going to watch. And he was like, just sign it and just sign it and just sign it. And so I did. And that first time I was like, but it's really, I think it's a great community of people. And I think, you know, the more voices we get in here that can give different perspectives, because I haven't had students at the high school level for the last 6 years. I've been teaching adults. So I teach students through those teachers, but I don't have that day-to-day daily run-in with, you know, issues and things that you like. My perspective is not that same perspective anymore. So if we could get those perspectives on this panel going, yeah, but you forgot about, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Like, I didn't think about it from that point of view. And I think the more points of view we have, the better the response is and the more ideas that we can come up with to help each other.
And the key word is help, because there are hundreds of thousands of teachers right now struggling to try to decode this massive change. So just if there's a place where they can come and hear other teachers talk about it. Chris, go ahead.
Actually, it's millions of teachers. And I have a challenge for the panel, which is each of you who has a wife, a husband, a partner, a niece, a daughter-in-law who is a teacher, recruit them. Let's set 2 weeks from today to be the one where we bring in our buddies and listen to them instead of talking at them, which we're really good at. And we're
Bring a teacher
really
to
helpful, but let's listen for a change.
Awesome. Emily?
And I just wanted to add, like, the first 2 or 3 weeks that I was here, there was a lot of oh, that's never going to work, or, oh yeah, here's a $3,000 solution. And it was like, no, we're talking about teachers who are often paying for tech out of their own pocket. So, can we bring it back to reality a little? And I think, like, after that first 3 weeks that I was on here, I was a little nervous that it wasn't going to change, but then it came up in Mukana, like, you guys are like shooting down ideas before they even get off the ground, and you're not solving the problems. And we shifted. And I think that shift was really important too. So bringing more people in here would make that more viable for all of us.
Bruce and then Michael. Go, Bruce.
Going further on Chris's suggestion, I have a graduate student working on her doctor's degree who is studying the role of the instructional coach. And one of the questions that came up that she's looking at the whole history of the research and all of that, but a question has come up is, what use can an instructional coach be in this particular time? So I have this idea of bringing her on and having her find out some of the answers of what would instructional coaches do. And I'm not sure that it might have to do with technology, but it might just have to do with certain educational things that are happening because of this pandemic.
Cool. Michael?
Yeah, I would second what Emily said, but I would also, channeling Alex, would just remind everyone that in terms of getting help and driving what we talk about, the more teachers that ask questions and the more teachers that upvote questions, that very directly drives what we discuss here. And if we don't answer something, or if we answer something and there's a follow-up, it's okay to ask again and to expand upon that as well. And the more teachers that are here and upvote, then the more that we will take the conversation in that direction.
So our own John Preto, who I'm looking around. Do I see John? John, can you wave your hand? He's not there.
John had to step out. I think he messaged me and said, like, he'll ask it again next week.
Okay, great. Brian Schwartzen says, for teaching Final Cut Pro, what physical tools, for instance, index cards, cheat sheets, keyboard overlays, would you recommend to help in the learning process? Roscoe, go.
Number one is expose. I can't believe how many of my students have never turned on Expose on a Mac. And it's the most invaluable tool. You're working in Final Cut Pro, you're working in Final Cut Pro. You need to see a reference document. You need to see something else to learn. You just go to the corner, go to that document, read it, go to the corner, go back to Final Cut Pro and keep working.
Cool. So that's a Mac OS thing that it will do inside Final Cut or any other tool, right?
It's a Mac OS thing. Any app, you can do it right now in office hours. I can suddenly make all my screens disappear just by rolling to the corner.
Cool. Michael Ball?
Yeah, I would second that. Also, when any of the pro apps that I learned, the thing that I definitely would like to keep up, and I forget where it is for Final Cut now. I assume it's somewhere in Help. But Apple usually has these one-page sort of keyboard shortcut PDF style sheets, and those are really helpful. The other thing that I personally really liked learning, I could never get used to keyboard overlays personally, but in Final Cut, in Compressor, in Motion, Apple has these really nice visual keyboard shortcut customization panels, and you can do, customize anything. I don't use them to customize that much, but for me, it's a very nice interface to have up that actually color codes the key commands that you're using. And so I don't know if actually this will work. That thing seems like it works. But something like this in Final Cut to just have open off to the side, if you have two monitors of the space, is something that I really like using because it makes it very easy to just also search and filter through what are the options that I have.
The command editor is very powerful.
Yeah. And it's just right under the Final Cut Motion, Compressor, whatever Apple Pro app you're using menu.
Yeah. I will note, if you're very new to Final Cut, there's a little group of keys on your left hand, the second row down from the top, ASDF, and then the stuff above it, Q2. That stuff is really kind of fundamental because tapping the A mode puts you in select mode. Range is R. W, the Q, the connect key to connect things. If somebody hasn't learned anything else, if they learn those single keystrokes, they're not combination keys. You just tap E and it puts you in a mode. Tap W, it puts you in a mode. If you concentrate on learning those, it'll probably triple your speed immediately. So let's move on unless somebody has another comment on the Final Cut world. We're moving along. Roscoe, Emily, can you discuss the idea of parent as volunteer that had started to be discussed yesterday? Problems, concerns versus benefit help.
So it gets really tricky for the online. And I think I put this in the chat yesterday because I was popping in and out in between my meetings and during my lunch while you guys were chatting. The biggest problem we have is FERPA, the privacy of students and education and their educational record. So you can have parents come in and do an activity like read a story to the kids. But if they're going to help students or, be a moderator for a group or things along those lines, you run into a really scary legal area, which families have the right to sue if you're not protecting their student from privacy issues. And around here in the Hudson Valley of New York, like we have some school districts where there are organized parent groups that keep track and will, if they hear something, they have like a lawyer on speed dial. Not to say that it's not appropriate, but like it's come to that where it's like very litigious and teachers are like, all right, well, you can come in and read a story, but then you have to leave. You can't hang out. You can't help the kids. It's not like when I was in school, my mom would show up and, sit with a reading group and do reading to help the teacher out. That's become an issue. So, they're not trained. They don't, they could say something that's not appropriate, especially in the political area we're in the current place in the country. So those privacy laws are extremely important. And so it becomes an issue of, it would be a great resource because we got a lot of parents and grandparents that are home who could help. But at the same time, because of privacy, because of, not always being appropriate or what they think is appropriate for the classroom is not what someone else might think is appropriate for the classroom. And that fine line, it can get the teacher or the school district into a lot more trouble than just ignoring it and saying, well, we have teachers' aides and those people have signed contracts. So we're okay there.
I'm only sighing because reading Miss Spider's Tea Party in my son's third grade class is one of my favorite experiences of all time. So, Roscoe, go.
Yeah. Yesterday I thought about this. Somebody made a flippant comment saying, well, this would be a great thing for all the bus drivers. They're used to controlling kids. They've obviously passed some sort of background check and that. And it actually said, there are a lot of people on an elementary school campus even that are ancillary, and they're not, the lunch monitors, ladies are not teachers. I say ladies, men too, but usually moms. There's a lot of people on that campus that could be put to use that I believe would meet the criteria of being approved to be around the kids. And also there's some recourse, because if they're being employed by the district and they do misbehave, then obviously you can discipline them in some way, and that may solve the issues.
Interesting. Anybody? Beiju's talking to somebody. I saw his hand go by, but it looks like we've done that. All right, moving on. Craig Hibbard. Any educators getting professional stress management training? Fascinating question. Has anybody heard of any districts bringing in that? Emily?
Our Ulster, I work for a co-op, educational co-op that provides services for an entire county. And one of our services is counseling for teachers, how to take care of self-care, how to take care of students and affecting trauma. One of the things we talked about yesterday in one of our meetings was that the effects of COVID are not, like, the trauma isn't just going to be 1 year of trauma. It could be 15 years of trauma affecting students, going onward and forward. And, all these things will affect all of us differently. And so being more mindful of that. We also have a daily meditation that you can log into a Zoom and do a 10-minute guided meditation thing before the school day starts for the teachers. The teachers do it for students out of their own classrooms if they want to. But yeah, they've been very aware of it. And one of the things we looked at yesterday also that was really interesting is what all of our school districts requested from us last year. And so it was very heavy on content and standards and getting kids ready for the Regents test in New York. And this year it's mental health and social emotional learning and how do we, how do we connect and create community, and how can we teach teachers to let students use inquiry more in order to guide the lessons instead of lecturing, give them something that'll, inspire them to go learn something on their own and then come back and share out, which is another interesting push from the districts. Whereas before it was very heavy on the content, and now it's much more heavy on the social emotional well-being of teachers and students. So I guess we're fortunate.
Great insights. Anybody else want to dive in on it? No, we'll move along. Roscoe Jones, does anyone have a good strategy or good strategies for building community for online classes or one-time events? Any studies on this to read? This question is from the chat room. Oh, cool. All right. Anybody? I've got nothing on this. Emily is hesitant, but Emily, we always care about what you say. So dive in, and then Michael's next. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, for elementary or K-12, so elementary and secondary, doing activities that revolve around getting to know you. So I provided all of my teachers with the same resources I gave to you guys in Discord, where there's different lessons, like what kind of person are you? Or the person that has to have 1 alarm or 15 alarms before you get out of bed? Make your virtual locker and share it out to the class. It's very difficult to create online community. We created a community, but we're here on a regular basis and we're all talking to each other, and you start to learn little things about each person in the room that, each week I know more about you guys than I did the week before. And I think that kind of, space for that in the school day needs to be created and encouraged, to share out, to be personalized to those students. And they just all want to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen. I think that's one of, Maslow's, levels of,
the pyramid.
Yeah, the pyramid of need, right? If you're not meeting the basic needs, once you get past, food, shelter, safety, it's just being seen. You don't want to be invisible most of the time.
Michael?
Yeah, I would, to add to what Emily said, just really creating that space, and that space can take many forms. It can be in a Zoom call together. It can also be assignments where the prompt is sufficiently broad such that a student adapts the work to something that they care about. You know, if you are in an environment where, like when I've worked with high school students, we do a lot of programming, and so they can adapt the scenes that they're building, the story that they're working on to be something really personal. And when a student does that, not only do they get engaged, but sharing those, you know, it helps you learn about your peers in the course as well. But then also just building in at every point when you're not online, an opportunity for a student, you know, to say something that could be a free-form text box or a class discussion board question. And it could be just to you, it could be to the entire class. And all those things build up over time. To Roscoe's general question of resources and research, I don't have any offhand, but if you are looking at any of the educational research libraries, tying the search to MOOCs, massive open online courses, generally yields people who have been trying to work on this problem and study it in courses of, you know, anywhere from 500 to 10,000 and build community. George Siemens is a really interesting professor who did some early work on MOOCs almost like 10 years ago, and I believe still continues, but that he may be someone whose name to search for as well, and I'll drop that in the chat.
So you're going to put a link to that,
yeah,
to MOOCs in there. Great, because some people, I've never heard of it, but I'm not an educator. Chris Clark and then Bruce Francis. Go, Chris.
Thank you for this question, Roscoe. It's I mean, two things to say. One is it's important for educators to give community building more time than they think it needs, because especially getting started in a new relationship, whether it's a one-time meeting, as you ask in your question, or a whole course. The community building takes time, and it's not really competing directly with your coverage of content. It actually enables the coverage of content that you wind up doing to actually be received and internalized. So give it more time than you think it needs. And the second suggestion is start out with questions that everybody is guaranteed to be able to have a good answer to. A good answer that like what are two boring facts about you and your life? So, you know, don't set the bar too high so that only the high verbal participants can jump out there with a great answer. Set the bar low and make sure. Often it's about your name. You know, not only what is your name, but where does your name come from, and who does it connect you with in the history of your family or in the canon of the saints? And what do you think your name means? And have you ever been known by nicknames? And who gave them to you, and so forth and so on. So everybody has a name and probably has a story about what their name means. So that's my advice, is to and treat that as in a sense a daily connection network that you're adding to every day. So you don't just take care of community building for the first meeting and a half and then say, when we're off to the races with content. It's something that community has to be tended like a delicate house plant. So you need to water it and fertilize it gently every time you come together for a little bit of time.
Answer. Bruce?
My circumstance offers me something ability to build a community, but it's very specialized, so it doesn't apply very broadly. But I have a few doctoral students who are all working on their dissertation, and so we come together on Zoom in this kind of a model and talk about the various things that everybody has to do, certain things in a dissertation in a certain way, and so it gives us a built-in opportunity to have a community. And they're also working all on different topics, but they're all using this same model. And so I can make use of that to build that kind of community.
Such an exciting discussion because we're all having to suddenly build new communities that we've never had before. And so I think this is a huge stress on all of society. So the more we talk about that, the cooler it is. John Preto is holding out his headphones like am I too low or am I too high or what does that mean? Now, we don't know what it means. Doesn't matter. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So we're moving on. Michael Vosspine. Is there an argument to be made that the online portions of education could be better handled at the state level, where teachers who excel at that can prepare video presentations and the local teachers can handle the person-to-person interactions? Comments? Did everybody get that? Emily, go ahead.
I'm two minds of this. This is kind of where Alex goes a lot with the idea that there'll be someone who does like an amazing physics lesson, and then at the local level, the teachers will, do the, office hours or college style, TA style, like, oh, I'm going to be your physics teacher in the room, but you're going to watch these videos. In my personal experience, because I do online education, like strictly online classes where there's recorded lessons, the kids move at their own pace and things like that. It doesn't motivate the kids if, you can use it as a supplement, send them to Khan Academy, send them to Bozeman Science, send them to John Green's videos, the crash course in blah, blah, blah. But I don't feel like the students that I've had that do that process do as well or engage as deeply with the content as when they have someone teaching them in the class. So should you use it for supplement? Yeah, but at a state level and going, oh, this is who's going to teach physics and it's going to be that person across the whole state. I don't see that working well in education, because each kid's ability, the differentiation, the ability to take in information doesn't work. It's not a one size fits all. Here's a video to watch and then you'll all be up to date.
Am I hearing a little bit of there's maybe a teacher that resonates with a particular kind of student, but doesn't resonate as much with a different kind of student? And if we send out one teacher, then they're going to lose some of the students who resonate with a different approach. Am I paraphrasing?
Yeah, I think that's basically what I'm trying to say is, like, I have kids who, thought I was the best English teacher they ever had. And I have other kids who, they were like, you were horrible. And it was just like, it wasn't their style, the way that I taught. And that happens when I teach adults too. Some adults come into my classroom and they're like, I can't take classes with you because you go quickly and you're excited and you do this. And I just don't do all that. And I'm too old for it or whatever. They give me some excuse, but they'll take it with someone else in my department who has a different approach and they'll be much better suited to that person. So I don't think that one size fits all is a really good indication of teaching and what it means to be there to see your kids and work with them at their level.
Michael Ball and then Chris. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I think I also feel like, when we use the word supplement to talk about videos, it really means to supplement what, the primary teacher is doing. And I think, to yours and Emily's point, it's not just about different teachers connecting with different students, and this may be a little bit different with higher ed than some of the K-12 students, but when you see, one or two people repeatedly throughout the semester, and they are the ones who are teaching you and asking you to do something, that helps build that connection. And for some students, not all of them, having this random person that they never know, even if they are excellent at teaching, be the one who they feel like is giving them the knowledge, and you are just the one then assigning the work, even if your job is actually more than that, of course. But that disconnect can be hard for some students to process. And just, when I think the other thing that is hard is that for a lot of content, there's more than one pedagogical approach to teaching it. And for sometimes there are very clearly right and wrong pedagogical approaches. But oftentimes we're dealing with, 50-50 type decisions of how we teach something. And so, finding someone else's videos or kind of aligning that can be a really difficult thing too. So, I think right now the right thing is helping. No one would be opposed to helping teachers build resources that lets them share those videos and polish those up and make them more accessible captions, meeting every type of digital accessibility standard and getting them out there, and then helping teachers find ways to pull them in. But sort of mandating something like that, we seem quite a ways off from even being able to try.
Chris had his hand up first, and then Bruce right after that. Chris, go ahead.
There's some wisdom that's been gained over the centuries by pastors of church congregations, which is don't have many guests in the pulpit, because what your congregation really needs is to feel like you are their pastor. And it's not about the cleverness or profundity of guest preachers. It's really about, this is my chance to reconnect with my peers, with my congregation members, but also especially with my pastor. So I think it applies to teaching as well. We have this American tradition of local is best. Public schooling is really locally determined, locally directed by our elected school boards and so forth and so on. We prize that with all its disadvantages as well as advantages. And finally, sometimes I think the sort of Alex forecast of the future reduces things from what we call education to training and the pursuit of credentials. And it may be a more efficient way to move ahead and get credentialed, but it throws away a lot that we value in terms of the human connection to one another and to, quote unquote, our teacher. Even if it's our least favorite teacher, we still tell great stories about surviving Emily Russo's really tough professional development course.
John or Bruce.
I may just be weird, but as I listen to all the different arguments back and forth about why there should be more teachers, or whether the one great teacher to present the material and then the good teachers, the local teachers to handle the questions and things like that, I find myself more and more attracted to the efficient, scalable model. I mean, if I could listen to a fabulous lecture to present it, or if I had my kid listen to this fabulous lecture to do it, and then I would have his or her teacher, the local person, answering the questions, I find myself thinking this would be a better way. This would be more efficient. There would be certain people who would not work well with that individual, but that's the same as what happens in the individual classroom. So I'm finding myself, even as I listen to all the arguments against having this scalability and efficiency, finding myself more and more attracted to it. I wish Alex were here to make his points, but I think that that's the direction that technology is allowing us to go in. The kinds of people that you can listen to on television, listening to TED Talks about an incredible variety of topics, and then thinking that if I were in some classroom in some little town somewhere, what would I hear? I might hear much more propaganda. I'd hear. So I'm just having a different sense of what technology and efficiency would bring us, and it seems a lot better than having the kind of individuality that we allow ourselves to do too much of.
Colin hasn't weighed in on this subject yet, so let's do him briefly, and then we'll come back to Michael Ball and close out.
It strikes me that most of the content out there of this sort, the great courses and master class and so on, are all targeted toward adult, not even adult education, adult enrichment. And I think a lot of the appreciation of the best instructors comes when you're actively learning, when you go in with intent to absorb information. And you don't have that in middle school and high school. At least I didn't. I've not been an instructor except in adult ed, and I did some BOSES training for teachers how to use the internet back 25 years ago or something. But they were there because they wanted to learn, and I was able to teach them through a Q&A mechanism. How do you know, here are the basic principles by which you can use the internet. This is back before there were any learning systems out there. So how do you think you can make use of this? And it was a QA system. It was much like office hours kept in person. That worked for that scenario. It engaged the students, the teachers, and was very effective. If I just put a video in front of them and said, these are the great things you can do with the internet, they would have walked out of the classroom. It's much more. We were discussing yesterday how to keep students engaged. Presenting them with video is not that way.
Okay. This resonates with me because I have a son who is an almost exclusively, it felt to me like audio learner. He had trouble with anything visual, but I remember I read him the whole Harry Potter series, and in book 3 or 4, he was referencing back to things in 1, and he almost understood them incredibly deeply and way better than I did. So I just realized he learns differently than I do, and I have to pay attention to that. So my concern, and it's not a predominant concern, it's just, can we make one piece of content that reaches all those types of learners, or do we have to specify it? And I didn't want to go last. I wanted Michael to go last because I'm not an educator and you guys are.
Well,
Michael,
just to fall on your point before we get to Michael, yes, there are different learning styles, and only teachers in synchronous teaching can adapt, to the needs of the students in that way. So,
Michael, go.
Michael.
Oh, we almost got through it without saying the word learning styles.
Sorry.
No.
It was bound to happen.
It was like, oh no, because learning styles as a frame of science are generally not a thing, but that's not really what I was going to say.
Well, I am not an educator, so I defer to you, sir.
But the point that students do still learn differently and that people need different resources is always going to be true. What I would say to Bruce's point, and much to your point as well, is that, this is not necessarily an either or game, right? When we talk about, having highly produced content that is really efficient, and when we talk about the human connection, what I think we'll try to have hopefully is giving students the opportunity to find what works for themselves and guiding them towards that decision. One of the things that I think is really interesting in higher ed right now, in Discord, we've been kind of ribbing some of the attendance policies and things that come up. And when I run my classes, I do things that incentivize attendance because I think that for the students who show up, it makes it a better experience, but I don't explicitly require it. And by the time that students are, 18 or 20, I mean, they still have a lot to learn. We all have a lot to learn, but they are able to hopefully make those decisions for themselves. And so when I get a class that is, 200 students instead of 400, in this case, this semester, that tells me something about how each of those students want to learn the content. And so, I think really one of the things that we can hopefully take advantage of using technology, and whether it's myself or, someone else producing those videos, is giving students the option to make their own decisions and to learn over time what works for them. And to note that, at a time in your life, it may be better that you're in person. And then a year or two down the road, if you have a job or if you have a new partner or whatever it is in your life, your learning style and needs may also change there. So I don't think for any one person, it's also a static decision that they have to say, I'm the video person or I'm the in-class person. As we go through, those things will adapt.
Very good. Last question, it looks like, and I don't understand the term. In an F2F lab, does anybody want to educate me as to what?
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face, thank you. Face-to-face lab. When students cannot save files to their desktop, I hand them a USB drive. For remote teaching, what's the equivalent of a USB drive? Emily, go for it.
Just an online like Google account or a Microsoft OneDrive account.
Dropbox.
Dropbox, yeah, any of those box. There's hundreds of them out there. It's just whatever you're more comfortable with and where you want to put your files and how much storage you get. But if this person's teaching at you know, a K-12, they probably have either OneDrive or Google.
So there are a lot of possibilities. Roscoe?
Yeah, there's a wonderful thing in Dropbox called a file request. And so you send a link to everyone or anyone, and when they click on that, it just, you know, shows up in a browser, and then whatever they drop on there gets uploaded with their name on it to my Dropbox. They can add all they want. They can add as huge as they want. It's really unlimited. It's an amazing service from Dropbox, but they can't control what gets, you know, sorted, downloaded. They can also have access to see what everyone else uploaded if that's what you want. I have a few of them. Some they can look at, some are just to me, but that works wonderful. So file requests in Dropbox. If you don't use it, check it out.
Excuse me. Thought that was the end. Michael?
Yeah. A very similar tool is in Google Drive. You can build a Google form that allows students to upload files as well. And then you can choose how public or private the destination of that file upload is. I would first say, if you're at a school, ask and see what tools you have. There's almost certainly one at this point that does have some file upload capacity. And if you're a Google or Microsoft school, you know, you will definitely have something there. But if you have any sort of learning management system, even the most basic ones that provide neither learning nor management at this point, still have a file upload function that can be tied to a course or a personal account. And so explore that. You will definitely want to teach your students, especially if they're younger, exactly how that works and show them where to find it and what steps to go, because these are not always the easiest things to learn. So don't forget that part of the process. But there's very likely something that you already have access to. Maybe not perfect, but there.
Fair enough. Looks like we've reached the end of the questions. Thank you all for participating, both here in the panel and off in the wide world of the web out there. We do education focus every Friday and Saturday. And I think I remember that, Alex, we may be migrating some parts of Saturday. But there will always, I think, at least as long as educators are struggling with this, there will be an education component to those 2 days. So please invite your friends. Please come back. You know, the whole point of this is that we understand there's a lot of stress in the system. So we just want to help in any way we can connect technology and the point of educating the next generation and making that as smooth and as easy as possible. So tomorrow, I guess we can just run it, Becky. Great. Tomorrow is our normal, Alex liked to call it our more casual day, the philosophical day. So if you have anything about media that you just want to chat about, it's a great time to come in, and maybe as a first timer, and see what you think about being on the Office Hours panel. We encourage everybody to give it a shot. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Great job, Bill.
Oh, by the way, thank you, Guy Cochran. Helped me so much during that. So thank you, Guy. Couldn't have done this without you.